What day is it that I should make the transition from the regular old radio into the YouTubes or the Rumbles? Today is that day. We are going to break the seal on this device here called the Zoom, and we're going to have at least one, perhaps two interviews that are done via the Zoom. One thing I think you'll notice, what's that? Billy says probably one.
Probably one. We're going to do baby steps to work this one. But
well, and I had asked the other one of the legislators that's going to come on if they had the possibility, if she were to say yes.
Maybe. We'll see. But what we want to do now is we want to take one time walking across the tightrope, and then we will evaluate our performance, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, if she says yes, we'll see if we can.
That's not the American way.
Yes, but it is the way if we want to make sure that we don't fall flat on our face.
I don't mind falling flat on our face. I think you're going to notice a couple things if this works.
The big 6 o'clock hour.
It is a 6 o'clock hour. One is the sound of the call should be better. Like right now, we're stuck with the sound of when somebody calls in on the radio. If you remember back in the day when we had, and we should probably reach out to her and see how things are going anyway, but Paulina from Ukraine, she was on WhatsApp back when we knew how to do that. And that was crystal clear sound. I mean, it just sounds super nice. That's what I expect for this Zoom call today with our guest in the 8 o'clock hour.
Because during all of your experience with Zoom, that has been your experience. It's been every Zoom meeting that you've been on has been just phenomenal and no technical glitches. It is a flawless platform.
It's not a question of it being flawless, but when it works.
Yes, exactly.
When it works, the sound really is quite something.
You know, that is the thing that my wife says about me all the time around the house. You know, when he works, it's
he's
great.
He's really quite average.
Yes, but most of the time, no.
So we're going to try that and see if that works. There's, I don't know how to describe yesterday. Billy and I were talking about it walking back from getting radio station coffee, which is its own experience, honestly. I drink buckets of it here at the show.
It's an acquired taste.
And today is that day where I feel it. Like when I rolled out of bed and I looked in the mirror, I'm like, did I go out drinking last night? Because I mean, my eyes are bloodshot. I feel like I have been run over by a bulldozer.
Yeah.
And the coffee matters. And there's
that's
Billy.
Called working in radio.
Yeah, but I can fend that. Usually by 5 o'clock as I'm getting ready to head out, I'm feeling, today it was one of those days where I sighed as I, opened the garage door, that sort of, then I came out to the car and looked at the donut and I went, the donut that is my tire for the moment, and went, got in the car, drove here, pulled into the parking lot.
Yeah, there's about once a week or at least once every other week where I wake up and I lay in bed and go, do I really need to be able to turn the lights on? I mean, how attached am I to this? And you're kind of looking around the four walls going, I guess I'm going to have to keep this thing. So I got to get up and move the body. So
it's like, if we could figure out a way for me to simply sit up in bed and do the show.
Oh yeah.
And now the chances that are diminished because we're going to the dang video, because we're going to try to add video to it. Now I've got to actually think about things like hygiene.
Oh, it's awful.
Clothing.
It's horrible.
I mean, this is, frankly, this is Mark's dream.
Yeah.
That we show up dressed for work.
Oh yeah. And I used to just walk in and just whatever was on the top of the pile just went on my dirty body to get here. And now we got
even if it was your wife's clothes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that made it fun.
It did. It's because sometimes it bunches and rides up, but I'll tell you, I have the shoulders for some of those strapless things. I'm just saying the side thing. Sorry. I apologize.
It wasn't the coffee. It was just a little bile. I don't know how it got up there.
How that happened.
Oh boy. That's a tough one.
And now I find myself standing in the closet, not really awake yet, going,
yeah, exactly. There's that.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what it is about this particular day, November the 16th. It's a Thursday. We're on the downward slide into the weekend. I don't know, man. I pictured the things I have to do when I get home, and that is involves this. Look, I didn't write the column yet for the Denver Gazette. I imagine Dan Yegamir, who is the editor, every week curses me off of the email. Like, why can't you just get it in on time? And I'm like, I don't know. And yet I feel powerless to get it in on time. Like, I just don't, I can't seem to get control of my time. And then I bought these cabinets, to put in there next to the fireplace. Yeah. And it's some assembly required, which, used to be daunting. Now I look forward to it. Like, it's my ability to flex my manhood. You know what I mean? Like, look what daddy did, IKEA, by the way, the best. whatever those people
yeah.
have done with the instructions.
And it takes just one weird looking tool. It is
Well,
bizarre.
one weird looking tool, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's adult Legos. I
Yeah.
love doing the IKEA.
Oh, it's great.
This is not IKEA, but
Oh.
so they have the instructions, but like every set of instructions that aren't IKEA,
Yeah.
they make an assumption somewhere in the instructions. And if you can't figure out what that assumption is,
Yeah.
you're stuck. Like you're looking at extra
yeah.
pieces. Like,
Yes.
did they give me that screw because they thought I might lose one and I need an
Yeah.
extra, or have I simply set this thing up for catastrophe?
Oh yeah. And I love that you're like, but I don't have 7A screws. I don't have what?
Yeah.
I have 4. What am I supposed to
Right.
do with this?
Where's the
Yeah.
letter J package? Where's
Yes,
the little thing with the two funny? Where's the J?
Yeah.
Is
Where
that a
that?
J?
Is that a J? Yeah.
Is that what a J looks like in China? Because
Yes.
are they trying to give me the
Yes.
kanji for J or
Yes.
whatever that
I have
thing
no
is?
idea. Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a challenge. It's
Oh.
worked out largely. I feel
Yeah.
really good. And then there's 4 of these things I'm trying to put
Oh,
together.
nice.
And well, and there was a set of chairs.
Yeah.
The chairs again. I feel again like I'm a superstar.
Yeah.
It required some welding on someone's part, not mine,
No.
to put
Oh.
the thing together. You
Yeah.
take the top part with the
Yeah.
back, and then when you get it all built, you slide it into
Yeah.
these two.
Yeah.
Shklaboom.
Yep.
Working out great until chair number 6 of 6. And then someone who did the welding left
Yeah.
a little bit extra lip of metal on the
Oh, yeah.
inside.
Yeah,
So
you
it kind of
can't-
goes,
yeah.
kink, kink,
Yeah.
kink. And I'm like, now what? Do I disassemble all of them and send them back? Do
No.
I send an email that just says, can
Do you
you
have-
just send me an extra one?
Do you have a
know?
metal file?
I don't have a metal
Oh,
file.
need a
That's
metal file.
You know,
Yeah.
Bart across the street would have a
Yeah,
metal file.
get
Maybe I
metal
should
file.
ask
Yeah.
Bart.
They're about A big, and they're inch or so thick, and they're normally flat on one side, rounded on the other, and very, very, very coarse. And I've got 2 in the house, and they're really so get inside of there.
Why do you have them?
We've done a lot of home improvement stuff, and so I've just
And you just happen to know people weld things in a way that require you to file.
Well,
Okay.
actually, people being me and my father-in-law. My father-in-law is tremendously talented for a person that has never worked in the welding industry. He is phenomenally talented at sweating pipe. He's really good at the welding, and I've learned so much from him. I'm a shadow of what he has the ability to do, but he is so good at it, and that's where he picked up the metal, because he may have come over. I would say no less than a dozen times too. Frankenstein, things that have gone wrong with pipes and other things in our house.
Frankenstein, some would say MacGyver.
Exactly.
know?
That's exactly it. The number of times we've worked on the outdoor sprinkler system and had to sweat pipe and things, and that includes even getting into the attic when the pipe split for our swamp cooler. This is over a decade ago. But so he is incredibly talented. I have learned so much from him about that technique, but I'm nowhere near. He is clean when he does it. And we got the metal file because I was learning and I was leaving stuff all
because they knew
over.
your mistakes.
Yeah. So
Well, I gotta. How much is a metal file? Maybe I gotta go get
a
one.
couple of, $8-9 maybe at most.
I gotta go get one
Yeah.
or something. Maybe I can
That's
salvage
super,
this
super
chair.
easy.
But
yeah,
it was, if it had been the first chair, easy. I don't even build the other 5. I'm just
not at
like, this is all junk.
No.
But on the last one, it was like building a puzzle, right? 1,000-piece puzzle, and there's a piece missing at the end, and you're like, no. And you're going through the box, and you're in the carpet, and you're looking around, and you're like, did I eat it? And you start, no. That's how I felt. Like, no, come on. I mean, like, I'm beating the hell out of this thing, thinking at some point, physics once again is going to prove that it will always win.
This brings me to a confession. It's a middle school thing.
This doesn't have anything to do with John Bonet.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, luckily. You talked about puzzle pieces and putting things together. Possibly, when I was in middle school, there are these 2 girls in my class that were doing a big puzzle.
Buddy, there's a statute of limitations on some of these things you're about to say. That is
this
unending.
isn't too bad. It's one of those things. It's not horrible. But one of them may have been kind of mean to me a couple of weeks beforehand. And just as, one of their, because they had gotten ahead in a certain class, and so they got to sit in the back, and they were putting together this great looking puzzle. This thing's like over 1,000 pieces, and they're working hard on it. And I might have taken a couple of pieces.
Oh my!
So they never finished it. I just put them in my pocket and just brought them with
the
me.
amount of the depression.
and at the end they were like, oh, how come we can't finish this? And the fact that they were distressed and they looked all over the room and they couldn't find the pieces and they couldn't complete their project gave a little bit of sunshine down in here in my heart.
That's it. You were a younger man.
It,
now
yes.
you would never do that.
No, not when people watching.
No.
No.
So I have that project to look forward to. I'm trying to assemble some stuff that I have to bring in from the garage that requires 2 people. And it's like, I just want to do it during the day. Everybody else is off doing their thing. I'm like, I just want to do it.
Yeah.
But you can't. I can't. It's too big to move by myself. Now, maybe I asked the neighbor, super nice guy named Felix, who's next door. I could ask Felix, but it's just, I don't know.
It seems weird because the idea there are other people that possess 4 appendages in your house that are mobile, and they can help. And
they could,
yeah.
But we will not be there in overlapping times. I mean, Jeff has fencing tonight from like 5 to 8. I have some things that take me up till 5. So
that's awful.
8:30 or something. I guess I walk into his room and go, "Hey, buddy, I need you to come out to the garage and help Dad lift something."
Are both the boys going to be home when you're not there? Because what I would do is
one of them will. That's the problem. Is one of them will. The other one will be at another thing, and it'll be me running around. I'm just I'll get it figured out. These are first world problems.
Yeah,
I mean, especially with all of the renters out there in Denver screaming for more of your taxpayer money, Billy, to subsidize their rents. This is obviously a very first world homeowner problem because I have a castle and the drawbridge and all that stuff and servants to help do everything. But
feeding crocodiles is expensive.
Oh my gosh. Keeping the moat filled.
Yeah.
You would think that, and in part global warming, or whatever we're calling it now. Is it warming or change or cold?
But you can lose several feet a day in that moat. I mean, it's just the amount of
and then it just becomes like this little divot in the ground, like a reverse speed bump. Who wants that?
No, and then when they're assailing the castle, they just trip. It's not the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing because they can. Mostly they don't die, and that's what you want with the moat.
Yes, you're missing the goal.
And that's the thing. When you are a homeowner, you are rich.
Yes, you are.
And that means you should foot more of the bill for the people that have made the decision to live in Denver in an apartment.
Oh, absolutely. Oftentimes I am so rich I can afford to have not 1 but 2 people follow me around and just throw rose petals as I'm walking, just because I'm that way.
I'm driving on the nicest donut you can buy.
Yes, exactly. You're on the Rolls Royce of donuts.
I will make my 3rd trip in about 6 days to the wonderful Auto Nation. They're off of Arapahoe. I need to get on the social medias. Like I need to figure out a way to become TikTok famous so that I can have other people do my bidding and I can sit there and put on makeup in the mirror while I pontificate about life's problems and make huge money.
Yes. Yeah, dude, because come on, influencer is not a real job. That is just
influencer pays, man. If it pays real money, influencer pays both than what you and I and even Mark sitting here actually doing work while we're talking.
You know what the funny thing is? This is the great part is that we have this younger generation, and again, these kids today. Hang on while I tighten my spleen truss because things are leaking. The idea is the kids are talking about, these are influencers and they're talking to me and they're telling me what products they use and this and this is great and I'm getting their firsthand experience. Oh, so you mean you've discovered advertising? Congratulations.
Right.
Wow. What an amazing discovery. You mean you have found out that if companies pay people that you listen to tell you to buy their stuff, it's persuadable.
It is. Wait, why don't we do that?
I thought we should.
Do we do that?
Not very well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want that job. I've watched some. And I find myself wondering what has happened to education in America because many of these people are vapid. And there are a number of other people who I find to be genius in what they've carved out. And I ask myself, why didn't I invent that?
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't I do that? Where I'm like, that's just so smart.
Yeah, a couple of them is just incredibly smart. There's one that our friend Mark Crowley turned me on to.
Mark Crowley turned you on?
Yeah, he did. It's when he wears the uniform. It does something to me. Sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. I could have said something else there. It would have gone really badly, but it would have been funny. He turned me on this TikToker that she's really good at short videos and presentation and she does a lot of real world examination things. Like she'll do things like, okay, I ordered a Chipotle burrito online and I'm gonna go stand in line. Let's see which one is done first. Things like that. Yeah. And then she'll say, okay, now that I ordered one online and now that I took one, I was in line and ordered it online, which one is bigger? Which one gave me more food? What's the more value for my money?
Interesting.
Yeah, so she does things like that. She had one that was really cool where she calls in and she's like, how can I get free stuff? So she had a day-long challenge with her grandmother, and she and her grandmother got on the phone, different phones, and called companies randomly and just tried to get free stuff. And the issue
Did they get it?
In some cases, yes. Now here's the lesson. She kind of went, hey, I like your stuff. Can I have free stuff? Grandma went with you're one of my favorite companies. I've been using you for years. What can I get?
Really?
So grandma was way out ahead. And so what she said is she goes, let's try this. She started calling and going, hi, I'm an influencer, blah, blah, blah. And she said the amount of free stuff she got as an influencer ran circles around both.
Billy,
what
how do we get to be
grandma
influencers? Dang it. Where do you apply?
I have no idea. Is there
Mark,
some sort of...
Mark's in the studio here. Yeah. He can't obviously hear what you're saying, Billy, for good reasons.
Which is probably a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
Mark, will this whole YouTube video thing we're doing, is it going to make us influencers? He says it will.
Oh, good.
He says it will,
I'm
Billy.
Excited.
This is it. So in the future, after we launch 5 million followers by noon. 5 million followers by noon.
Wow.
How many of them English speaking?
Yes.
None will be English speaking, according to Mark. But still, I like the idea of Billy being able to call up and use his sales superpowers to say, hey, I'm part of a 5 million person, show. Can you send us free stuff?
Yeah. How about what free
I'd
stuff
like you to begin with a car dealership or something like that. If you could start big,
I will
and
try.
we'll work our way down to things like a PS5.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
that's fantastic. That's
alcohol or something. Some
like
kind
where
of
your head is. That's good.
Yeah, it feels like we shouldn't have to pay for anything if we're influencers.
Not at all. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the rule, isn't it?
It should be.
Yes.
I would be loath to end this segment though without asking you about the ridiculous schedule that you're keeping and what's the end goal. Like every day when you're telling me about, hey, I had to do this and this is what I'm doing today, I'm like, are you squirreling money away for that moment where I walk in at 5 something and you're not here and it's a little note that says reached 1 million, peace out?
The end goal is to someday settle down, relax, and embrace
a free tire.
No, the sweet comfort and caress of death. I'm sorry, that went dark.
You don't have to work hard for that. It's coming.
Yeah, it is. That's the thing, and it's really he's behind me and he's chasing me the entire time. It's just I'm not sure there is a goal. The goal is just to keep feeding the plague of locusts that live in my house that I call children.
How many years until they're ostensibly self-sufficient?
Well, my wife and I have talked about 6 months just out, but evidently there are laws and things like that.
Wait a minute, how old's your youngest?
She's going to be 15.
See, the laws are far more forgiving when you get 15 or older.
Yeah,
there are certain obligations you have. I know some attorneys that work in the GAL world, and what they tell me is it feels like there's an increased number of people who are simply saying, go ahead, state, take my kids. I mean, I can't believe this phenomenon. There are people out there who adopt kids, right? Like make their lives, tell them, and this, I'm going to be mommy and that's going to be daddy and we love you and this is your home. And then like, well, this isn't working out. So
we can return him.
So we'll return you to the state. Like I'm like,
I know.
What are you talking about? This isn't even a puppy.
No.
You know what I mean? Like this is a human being.
It's not even a can of soup. You can't do this.
You can't just go back to some place and be like, you know what? They clashed with the color scheme of the house.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I'm telling you, there's a vehicle for you and your wife to figure out a way to move on.
We have been exploring the idea of for Christmas that we would get the kids their own suitcase, alarm clock, and emancipation papers. So far, though,
wouldn't that be so awesome?
It'd be great.
But you have to give it to them in that order.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like the suitcase is like, oh my God, are we going on a trip?
Yes,
sorta.
Yes.
Yeah, sorta. Some of us are.
Yeah.
And then an alarm clock, like, oh my God, this is great. It must be international. We have to get up early.
Yeah, and then you do it like their travel tickets, and you wrap them up like papers. They get so excited.
That's right. What is this? What does this mean? Emancipation.
Is
that near Belize?
It is very close.
It's not.
Here, go outside and talk about it with your sister. We lock the doors. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you can even have the car. Just don't come back.
Just don't come back.
Yeah, it's wonderful as we head into Thanksgiving and family time.
About happy and family stuff. I'm not sure. It's the issue is it's just kids are expensive and things are expensive. So yeah, I have been running ragged this week. It has been here and then doing radio for Westwood One,
Oh,
and
boy.
then turning around and doing trivia in the evening. So it is a tough one, and it continues today. Like yesterday, I wrapped up. I had about an hour and 15 minutes to myself total throughout the entire day, doing stuff that needs to be done around the house. Because, it's not just like I lounge around and get to eat bonbons and ketchup on the soups. No.
But are you wearing at least a robe?
Technically, I mean, I guess you can call it that. Depends if it covers everything, but it makes me feel pretty.
Does it make you feel like a judge? That kind of robe, or like a robe?
No, it makes me feel like Hugh Hefner. It's a smoking jacket, technically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you smoking in it? Hello.
Hello. Yeah, so it was fun, and I did trivia last night. It was kind of funny. I had a deal where one of the teams, and there are a lot of teams that are coming in. Oh, and I got to help out a single mom as well during the bar trivia thing, which is kind of cool. So I'll explain that one first. The single mom's there. She's come in the last couple of weeks, has an adorable little kindergartner, but he's a kindergartner. So he has a bundle of energy.
Oh, sure.
And he's got what's a little inflatable, a little basketball, and he's kind of bouncing it around, and then he starts kicking it around like a soccer ball. And I watch him move around the bar a little bit, and he's kicking the ball, and I'm like, light bulb. So I walk over and I kind of talk to him like, hey, have you been, practicing soccer, etc. And he's like, yeah, I just started and this. And so I talked to him about the technique of dribbling and what he needs to do. Now, there's a method to my madness. The kid is wandering around mostly madness. He's wandering around the bar kicking the ball, and it's going 5, 6, 7 feet. It's going underneath people's tables. And I said, no. I go, the secret is to keep the ball near you. The challenge is to move in and around these tables and near these people and not lose the ball. It should not go under the table. It should not get far enough away from you that you can't control it. And he's like, oh. And I showed him what I meant during one of the questions, and he got excited. And so for the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, he's quietly and moving and keeping the ball near him as he's moving around the bar. And the mother looks at me and mouths, thank you. And I'm like,
oh, nice.
I got it, because I understood what she was going through. So did that one. And then I had a team that came up, and it was kind of cool. The question is, what is the largest classification of mattress that you can order for your bed? And they're named after states. And so what is the largest classification? Yeah.
California King?
California King used to be the largest.
Wait.
Yeah, there is a larger one. And so it was funny.
Vermont King?
Well, I'll tell you what it is here in a second. And I had a guy that plays, and he and his wife come in, and they know that I do the musical questions. And so I'm playing a song. I'm playing Counting Cars by Snow Patrol. And he comes up and he goes, this is good. He goes, but you should be playing Californication from Red Hot Chili Peppers. I go, that's a great idea. Except it's wrong. And he goes, what? And I go, the two songs I just played were I Melt With You and then Counting Cars by Snow Patrol. And he looks and he goes, ah! And I go, yeah, it's Alaska.
Oh, there's an Alaska King?
Yeah, it's 9 feet long.
What?
Yeah.
I've never seen it advertised. Is it followed by the word crab?
No.
Because I've heard of that, the Alaskan King crab.
No, there is an Alaska mattress, and that is, and so, but he came over, and it was so funny because he goes, I thought I was being clever and I was wrong. And I'm like, I know. Yeah. But, and I said, so you drop those
and then
little
you said,
things
sit
in there.
down.
No. And I had another guy come over and he asking me about this clue. He didn't understand it. And I said, what's the fourth line in the song? And he went, oh, crap. And it has to do with, it was Ricardo Montalban. And what car company was he working with when he was advertising his fine
Chrysler
Corinthian leather? Yes. And that was the thing. And it's, so you play Bare Naked Ladies. If I had $1 million, fourth line of the song is, if I had $1 million, I would buy you a K car, a nice, reliable automobile.
Oh my goodness. That's so in the weeds. You got to be smart to know that stuff.
Yes. But
man.
Again, that's what, and so that's, and I had a couple of people that I've talked to that when I do these games, you're playing two games at once. You're playing the game about what is the answer, but you play this game about how this song could possibly, and you get people talking back and forth about it. So it's kind of it's a really fun thing. So yeah, I went kind of deep with those songs. And on a side note, because Ricardo Montalban, the fine Corinthian leather, two things about that. Complete and total lie.
What accent was that you were doing?
I have no idea. Very bad one. But it's definitely not his. The thing is, it was the same leather that was available in every other Chrysler. They just gave it a different name just to charge you more money for it.
Well, but it's Corinthian leather. You can't just say it's Corinthian. The FDA wouldn't let you do that.
Except the Isle of Corinth is in Greece and there are no cows.
That's what makes it so rare.
I know. That's the thing is, you can't have Corinthian leather. There are no cows on the island. There's no such thing as Corinthian leather. It is completely made up.
Did you
it was a marketing
ever
technique.
see the SNL skit with Bill Murray ¿Quién es más macho?
Yes.
Where he would be like,
Yeah.
and that was the only question.
Yes.
¿Quién es más macho?
Yes.
Lorenzo Lamas
Yeah.
or Ricardo
Yes,
Montalban? And the
Yeah.
guy would stand there and then he'd just keep repeating it. Lamas
Yes.
or Montalban?
Yeah.
You know?
I love the fact you referenced Billy Crystal because I was going through the thing the other day.
Bill Murray. Did I say Bill
Murray?
Crystal?
Oh, no, I sorry, Bill Murray.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Bill
it was Bill.
Murray, yeah.
It was Bill Murray. Sorry.
But I do love Billy
person.
Crystal.
Yeah, sorry, Bill Murray. It was a story that I'd heard from a radio friend of mine who was at an awards show, and Murray happened to be there. So it's and so he said, "Okay, I'm at the he goes, I'm in the bathroom, and I'm there at the urinal." And he goes, and stepping next to me, all of a sudden, it's Bill Murray. And he goes, "What do? You panic." And you're like, eyes forward, don't do anything, don't say anything, eyes forward. And he said, you get about 3 seconds, and then Bill Murray quietly goes, "So you're standing here peeing next to Bill Murray.
Yeah.
What you think?" And he just starts laughing. And he goes, I know. You can tell all your friends about it. And he said he was the nicest guy. He chatted with him in the bathroom.
Oh, that's amazing.
Afterwards. Yeah, but he said just that icebreaker. He goes, it was so self-aware of Murray to be standing next to him and know that the person next to Bill Murray is going to be going, "Oh my God, Bill Murray."
Yeah,
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah,
what
so
do I say? What do
he
I
figured
do?
a way to break the ice.
I got that going for me.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going through all the lines. Somebody texted in, by the way, about the Corinthian leather.
Yeah.
It's human leather.
Oh, that's fantastic and creepy.
Yeah, creepy. It could be true. With our texters, it could be somebody right there standing in leather faces,
Yes, that is true.
Garage or wherever all that stuff took place, the barn.
Yeah, or Buffalo Bill.
Or Buffalo Bill.
Like that
Which,
reference?
by the way, are we ever going to, please don't ever remake that movie. I worry now that we're at a place where Hollywood is so bereft of any new thought and ideas that it's just a matter of redoing things like Footloose, which again, those people all involved should be put to death.
Yes,
and I don't want to go all Hamas on them, but they should be put to death.
Oh, absolutely. You
don't agree to do that.
No, not at all.
I mean, at some point, and I had originally heard this, they were going to remake Top Gun. Before it turned out it was actually Top Gun Maverick, which was a fantastic movie. And I thought, nope, that's just you. There have to be rules, and where the rules won't step in, mobs have to. And we have to, maybe we have to storm the Hollywood Capitol or something.
And it's weird that they always go after, they go, Footloose. This was a great movie that was beloved by everybody. Let's do it again. Rather than going to the stuff that failed. I mean, nobody's going back and going, God, you know that Marlon Wayans vehicle, Two White Chicks? Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that.
But that also is a classic.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Turner and Hooch.
Yes, nobody's saying
Or
Turner
The Man
Hooch.
with One Red Shoe. I mean, these are all Tom Hanks movies before he figured out hooking up with Steven Spielberg was the path towards the Academy Award. But
exactly.
They could certainly remake any number of those.
Any number of
or wait a minute, Krull.
Oh,
why not remake Krull? It's a great story.
Yes.
Anyway, it could have been like Star Wars-esque, and it just kind of...
And you're telling me that both Waterworld and Ishtar aren't screaming for a redo?
Oh, my God.
I mean, of all the movies that need a win,
Gate?
that need redos. Come on. That's
the Waterworld one, again, one of the biggest flops in the history of Hollywood by the dude who's now, I don't know if you know this, he's Kevin Costner, who plays John Dutton. Well, at least he did on Yellowstone. He's got this like 18-part movie now coming out called Horizon or something like that. And ever since I imagine Dances with Wolves, which I loved, epic movie, epic movie. Yeah. Dude's been in search of that next big epic movie. Yes. Right. Like Wyatt Earp was going to be that thing. Yep. And as it turns out, the guys down at Tombstone were like, let's just crush this cool style, like MTV style. Let's get us a little Kurt and a little Val. Let's just go. And it turned out to be awesome. Yeah, it turned out
incredible.
What I mean?
Yeah.
I'm Your Huckleberry.
Yep. I'm Your Huckleberry.
You get up t-shirts with that stuff on it.
Oh, there is in the video game that my sons and I play, there is a specific gun named the Huckleberry that has a tagline underneath it. It is a reference. It is a reference to Tombstone. It is fantastic.
There's so much good about that movie. And yet Kevin Costner, I feel for him because he was making something actually dramatic and critically acclaimed. And these guys were making a popcorn movie and it crushed it. And I'm like, well, so I'm wondering what's going to happen with the Horizon thing. Maybe that'll be the remake of Heaven's Gate.
About that. And with Waterworld, one of the things that I love the most about that is that it was a huge budget movie. And so Universal Studios said, we've got to go ahead and inside of all of our parks, create a theme exhibit, an adventure for the peoples to come and sit so they can relive the grandiosity that is Waterworld. And it flopped. And they're like,
Now what?
This is awkward.
Yeah. What do we do now?
How do we do this? We can't just rebuild the thing. We're just going to pretend like the movie didn't exist.
Oh, I know the other big one he did. The Postman. Do you remember that?
Oh, my God, yes.
And it was like, buddy, you're trying too hard.
Way too hard.
You can't do, Dances with Wolves on water.
Yeah.
And with the mail.
Yeah,
that's whatever it is. You can't do that.
It was like it's like Dances with Wolves. And he's like, but what if he was a mailman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in my opinion, similar to the whole Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan mashup where Sleepless in Seattle.
Yep.
Brilliant, man.
Brilliant.
I love that movie. Great soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then You've Got Mail.
Yeah.
I mean, some people swear by that movie, but I'm like, why did we need to do Sleepless in Seattle again?
Yeah, we didn't need to.
And then anyway, I think maybe this is the next version of this thing. Once we get the video thing figured out, this is how we become influencers.
Ooh, I'm excited.
On the whole movie review thing.
Oh, there we go.
Stefan used to do that thing, like Friday movies and stuff like that. And I believed he actually saw some of the ones he reviewed, which was
a few of them.
Interesting. Yeah, which was several of them. Maybe I don't want to take Stefan's thing because that's just Stefan's thing.
No, I think we should take it.
But what if we did it on a different day? Then it would be ours.
I just say take it. What's he going to do?
Yeah, what? and we have next week, we have the Thanksgiving Day parade coming up.
Yes, we do.
Hopefully getting the big man Pete involved.
Yeah, he is going to be here. He's going to be arriving fashionably.
It's always going to kind of be Pete's thing, but I wonder what if we did something like a different kind of parade? You know what I mean? Like a President's Day parade. And then we just the fake presidents.
That could be fun. I still like the idea that we need to steal Stefan's movie thing. But the issue is that you and I then have to find a way to carve out time to watch whatever movie it is that we're supposed to be watching.
Yeah, but and listen, you and I have already talked about this on air. The way movie theaters are going these days, they rent them out to watch different movies, and they're relatively cheap if you get the older ones. If we were to do that and turn it into like a 7-10, viewing, I don't know how many tens of people we get in there. I'm just saying that's the vehicle to carve out the time. We do it the next day. We talk about it.
We could do that like once a month easily because
every once in a while we throw out, like, and this is one of the listeners. Like we could have, I've never seen Alexa this drunk before at a movie theater or something like that, or Joe from Arvada came clothing optional or something. You know what I mean? That could be a whole series of things, sightings of different listeners.
Who guessed that Joe from Arvada was cosplaying as Essie from Hunger Games? It was spectacular, though.
You know that.
And I'm just poking fun, Joe. We love you.
That could go on. We could do that. Yeah. We just need a staff.
Yes, we do.
Because I think a lot of people feel like there's a huge operation going on right now. There's Lewis rocking some technology. There's Mark trying to figure out, and problem with Mark is he's got us hooked into his camera on his laptop. So everywhere he goes, we can see him.
Yeah.
He it could be the women's room. I don't know where he's at right now, but we can see everything he's doing. And then there's you and there's me. That's
look
it.
At that tile. That's
it. There is no other staff here.
No.
Right? Like there's no people to, like, you have and there's Mark flashing us. There's no good idea person. Like if you go to them and say, hey, I got a Billy Blaze, Vivek Ramaswamy thing, come up with an idea. People just laugh and go, that's a good one. And then they go back to work. And it's like, who will help execute this great idea?
Yes.
There's nobody.
Oh, yeah. It's like the little red hen. Who will help me bake the bread? We got nobody.
No. They'll all jump in and eat on it.
Yes.
I don't get it, man.
Yeah.
Unless, oh my God, I don't know how we got to 6:38. And in fact, I had these dreams of, since we've got this newly expanded live read sheet, I had this dreams of knocking out 1 to 2 in the 6 o'clock hour. That's not going to happen. This was as formless and substanceless an introductory section as we've ever had, and yet the time seems to fly by. I feel like we need body cams. We should do, that's the next step, Mark, if you're listening. Body cams for Billy and I, for not just in the studio, but as we walk around and do stuff. Listen, we're going to cut away for a break. It's just the rules, and you need the break too, to clean out your ears, maybe get a drink, that kind of thing. We're going to come back. We're going to do the Thorpe Report. As you know, always very uplifting. And then the super uplifting, you choose the news. Stick around. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Couple texts before I turn it over to Billy. Someone suggesting Movie Monday. We talked a little bit about that. Another one, Avatar is Dances with Wolves in Space. That actually is pretty insightful. And then another, God, I love it when you guys drink at work, the 6-hour rules. And with that, we'll turn it over to our bartender-in-chief, Billy, for the Thorpe Report.
Oh, sorry. Pardon me. I apologize there.
Just glad it was that end.
Oh, yeah. A shift in our weather pattern is going to usher in much colder weather across most of our state. Coming up this weekend, we could drop 20 to 30 degrees, but weather people are telling us, though, we don't know what's going to happen anyway because they don't know either. Snow, colder temperatures are likely going to spill into our mountains and maybe down here into the metro area. The colder weather is going to stick around next week. Upper level trough is going to elongate the area of low pressure. At least that's what she said. Settling in over our western and central U.S., temperatures are going to be in the 50s and 60s, and a little bit lower. System could bring cooler and perhaps snowy weather just after Thanksgiving. Wonder who mentioned that in this. I don't know. Seems like someone said something about that. I don't know. But authorities identified James Matthew Neal, a 23-year-old, as a suspect. Active arrest warrant for his homicide. He's considered armed and dangerous. He was involved in a shooting here in town recently. Also, Metro Denver Crime Stoppers and the Lone Tree Police Department are asking for your help locating a suspect accused of a Centennial man. The 73-year-old was shot to death, 2009 light blue Toyota Highlander. He was in a parking lot of 8500 block of South Yosemite Street around 12:25 in the afternoon, November 4th. His keys, wallet, camera still in the vehicle after the shooting. Also, we have 2 people have been arrested as well after a deceased man was found on a Nevada bus stop in mid-January. They were called to a welfare check for a stop near 9825 West 58th Avenue. They found a person later identified as 43-year-old Salvador Vasquez. He had died and had significant injuries. They've arrested 2 people in connection to that death. Also, the Weld County Sheriff's Office is asking for...
That's our friend Steve.
Yeah, is asking for your help finding a car thief who escaped their custody yesterday afternoon.
Oh, no.
The Sheriff's Office released that Luis Fernando Serdar Regaldo, 27, was being medically cleared before being booked into jail when he escaped from custody. Had been arrested earlier in the day on possession of a stolen vehicle, obstruction, and attempting to influence law enforcement, according to the Sheriff's Office. He was seen in a white T-shirt, dark-colored pants, white shoes, blue stripe, 5'10", 200 pounds, and does have a tattoo of an unknown design on his right arm. Our Denver mayor, Mike Johnston, is making some last-minute changes to his micro-community plan. He is reducing the number of people that will initially live at the site at the Overland neighborhood. And after neighbors have expressed concerns, current plans call for 120 people, and he said most likely it's going to be less than that. Also,
wait a minute. Like one?
I don't know.
One is less than 120.
Yeah, maybe 3.
Is the whole point?
It has to be people, not just person. So
we're getting to the point where it's like everyone's like, we need to do something about the homeless. But not here.
Yeah, not near me.
Don't do it here.
Why would you think this? That's you silly people. I know that is the problem. Everyone wants to help them, but nobody wants to help them near them. And so it's difficult. And elsewhere, our Rocky Mountain NAACP and some parents are demanding safety, accountability, and more transparency from the Cherry Creek School District after a video circulated at West Middle School. Yeah. In the video, a student can be heard saying the N-word a number of times and saying derogatory things and saying that even the black people should not be alive right now. And he hates their skin color, hates how they talk, and more.
What the hell?
Yeah, according to the district, students involved with the video did face significant discipline. However, apparently the kid still attends the school. Odd. So I'm just saying that, if the kid attended the school and said things like this, and you're a kid that might be a black and African-American, how do you feel about him? And again, I
don't know, but I presume it's a lot like how Senator Daphne Janae Michelson feels when she's around Tim Hernandez.
Exactly. And there's, I don't advocate for the violence, but if this kid that did the video got punched in the mush by another student, I would not cry. I'm just saying, I'm not condoning. I'm just saying I wouldn't feel bad about it.
It would be that'd be an interesting one, man. Let's say, how do you confront that as either a prosecutor or as a juror? Someone comes to you and says, "Dude, outright said blankety blank blank blank," and got that. Oh my God, we had a case like this.
Yeah,
it was one where a kid shows up in a hallway and does some sort of a weird pose. Like I can't remember what it was, but it had some connection to white supremacy in front of this African-American kid. And he just laid him out. Just laid him out. And they were both juveniles. And I remember it came in and we were talked to about this. And I'm like, one, I do not want to send the message that, hey, if anybody says anything that offends you, even at a racial level, it's Katie bar the door. But we're not going to mark up this kid with court system stuff over this? I mean, there's got to be some other way to resolve this.
Yes, exactly. And I have connections in the educational world, and I know of a situation like this recently.
I hope your wife knows, but you're sleeping with one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm aware at a school, not the one where my wife works or other people, but I'm aware of a school where the security guard has been disciplined and suspended short term because they grabbed a kid after the kid used an N-word at them, insulted them, and said other things to them. And the security guard grabbed him and said, "What did you say?" and yelled at him. And that action has resulted in disciplinary.
That's nuts.
And so what I'm looking at, and this is the part that makes me angry, this is the part that hurts me, and then we're going off on a tangent here, is that child has now been empowered. That child used those words and used that language specifically to get a reaction and to get that adult to do something. They were looking for it. That's why it came out of their pie hole. Yeah. And then when the adult did something,
you say it to
they were protected. Sure. Yeah. They were protected, and the adult faced the consequences. This person's beliefs and actions have been reinforced, and that is wrong. Absolutely and completely wrong. Elsewhere, Tina Peters has decided that you shouldn't be able to investigate her in case she did the crimey stuff, even though she went in and took stuff.
We might actually talk about that.
We might do that. That's all I got. So we probably should step aside.
Buddy, we got to cut away here. You're going to have to do that voodoo that you do where all of a sudden a bunch of things don't show up now, but they show up later. Stick around, folks. We're going to try to do it. It's called You Choose the News. It's the high point of the morning. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Let's turn it over to the big man for You Choose the News.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning again where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. Yes, we have scoured the interwebs for just seconds this morning. It seems like hours to find really stupid stories and giving them even dumber titles to play this fake radio news game. Why? Because they let us. We question their decision-making as well, but they're in charge. What are you going to do? Alrighty, sir. Here we go. Headline number 1. 2 is better than 1, says the rich people. Headline number 2. Pretend tragedy becomes tragedy IRL. Headline number 3. Welcome to America. And headline number 4. Shh. It's an emergency.
Shh, it's an emergency.
All right, shh, it's an emergency. We're going to Carnation, Washington for this one. People in Carnation are running out of patience with their city leaders. See, there's a dam there, and there's a warning system with a bunch of loudspeakers that is tested, and every once in a while it goes beep, 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 and wakes everybody up, and it's annoying. So they've been complaining, and they're like, can we do something about the annoying system? And so the city said, yes, absolutely, we will take care of it. And they did. And now you cannot hear the alarm.
What?
Yeah, they changed the speakers and what they did in the alarm system, and now it's quiet. So literally, if you are not within a certain distance and outside near the dam, hear the alarm, which is going to be a super surprise in case anything goes wrong. Alrighty, sir. Welcome to America.
Welcome to America.
Welcome to America in San Francisco. We rolled out the red carpet for a wonderful set of journalists from the Czech Republic. They are from a Czech Republic TV station, and they were here with the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco, also covering Biden meeting Xi Jinping, and they were welcome to America in style. They were robbed.
Oh.
Yes, according to officers, their vehicle was stopped on the street. They were doing a stand-up shot, and men with firearms came out to approach the group and demanded all of their equipment and took it.
That's
Welcome
awesome.
to America.
That's it. You've got your first experience.
Yes, now you are American. You have been robbed.
Next up, taxes.
Yes, congratulations. All right, now final choice. 2 is better than 1, says the rich people, or pretend tragedy becomes tragedy IRL.
Pretend tragedy.
Pretend tragedy becomes a tragedy in real life. This, we are going to the National Theater. And recently, their production of Romeo and Juliet, it had to be suspended. Now, this is over in Hungary because there was an accident. You know that part where Juliet is on the balcony and Romeo is there?
What light through yonder window breaks?
Hey,
it is the
nicely
east
done.
and Juliet
is
the sun.
Yes, that part. Well, Juliet evidently got a little bit of the lightheaded while Romeo was below, and she tumbled off of the balcony, hitting Romeo, injuring both of them. Yes, she fell down, and they both were actually had to go into surgery because of some of the injuries suffered. So the production was suspended that evening, and also suspended indefinitely.
A death by any other name would hurt just as much.
Just as much. So yeah, that is the thing that happened to them. So that's the end of it. So it's kind of funny. That,
dude, I don't know how we got through it. The good news is we
idea.
still have the loser edition, so we get the Rich 2 thing perhaps tomorrow.
Yeah, wait until you see. This is something that rich people are doing that is phenomenally stupid, and you can't wait till you hear the reason for it.
When we get the Zoom and the YouTube's thing figured out, I wonder if there could be a video component to the You Choose the News. I don't want to set the bar too high for you because I know you're doing all that.
I will take that as a challenge. There's sometimes we absolutely can do that. There, like yesterday, I had the Cobra video.
Yeah, that Cobra video was disturbing on a golf course. Here's something. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about this Tina Peters lawsuit because it just dropped yesterday. It's interesting, folks. I've got it. You don't. We'll talk about it. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's hour 204. We get replaced by Chuck Kurt at 10 o'clock, 11 DP, and then a little SG from 1 to 3, and then JS, a little Jimmy Sangenberger from 3 to 4. He's doing great work. If you haven't had a chance to listen to Jimmy ever, I don't know what's going on. But if you haven't had a chance to listen to him in one of these primetime slots, you ought to. Dude brings the heat every single day. A couple texts to just follow up here. Some folks texting in, why? Because your listeners demand you choose the news. That's true. Another one, KNUS Movie Night, hosted by Senator Hickenlooper, showing Behind the Green Door. I like that one a lot. I think that's just so funny. And then other texters asking about, listen, the judge, there were closing arguments that were made in the Keep Donald Trump Off the Ballot lawsuit case, where Jenna Griswold claims to just be relying upon the court when she's advocating for a certain outcome. Nonetheless, that was that 14th Amendment Section 3 thing.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
I candidly, I did not have the time to listen to a single moment of any aspect of the case. I'm going off of the reports. And, given the quality of journalism these days, I'm just loath to rely upon anything that shows up.
The word quality is doing a lot of work in the
It's doing a lot of work. So I don't know. I would say that having looked at in part, the opinion of the Michigan judge, who simply said, no, I'm not keeping him off the ballot, I thought that was a compelling argument, which is, look, it isn't up to me to figure out what it means for insurrection and all this stuff. That's a Congress thing. You go define this term and figure out how it fits. Don't ask me to invent stuff that creates this historic thing. Okay, that makes sense to me. That's the kind of discretion I want to see judges who aren't going to be activists and looking for their name in the paper do. Here, I've had some smart people text in and say, I think she's going to do it. I think she's going to keep him off. Why did she have the hearing? All this. I don't know that having the hearing is foreshadowing or not. It doesn't matter which way this comes out. It's going to be appealed, but there's a way to have it come out where you're a footnote. And there's a way to have it come out where you're the star of the show. And the only way for the judge to be the star of the show is to keep Donald Trump off the ballot.
That's true.
And then that would be the first in America. It would be instant fame. The name would be everywhere. New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, it'd be everywhere. But if the judge just simply says, like all the other judges so far have, and I think there've been two, no, thank you. This is a matter for someone else or at a different time, which was the Minnesota one. Then they're just done their job and they go to obscurity.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think there are a couple of layers. One, I have seen in some of the arguments that the Trump defense has leaned into the idea that the election was actually stolen, regardless of the fact they can't provide any proof. They didn't walk in with any receipts, but they did make the theory argument about it. And I find that interesting because if the theory is this unproven idea that the election was stolen, again, because they did not offer any proof of it. They did not bring in the receipts. They could have, but they did not present the receipts. The idea for me there is, well, if they think this happened and they took these actions, that gives an excuse for the judge to keep them off the ballot, because you're saying the motivation and what you took was not based in reality, and you did the Looney Tunes stuff based on stuff that was, false. The other part, though, as we talked about it off air, is I heard a legal professor saying that he thinks they are arguing this case wrong, that it is too focused on insurrection in January 6th when it really needs to be focused on the Constitution. And I hadn't seen this idea before, and I was surprised that prosecution hasn't gone after it, because I think there may be some hay to be made. And the idea being that Trump's actions, and again, you would have to look at the cumulative actions and everything that he took post a little bit prior to November and then post November up through January, culminate as an attack on the core of the Constitution. The idea that the steps Trump was taking was to prevent the peaceful transfer of power and to prevent the actual winner of the election from assuming the office. And things like statements that we got from Jenna Ellis saying that someone in the office told her that the boss isn't going to leave. Those things lead to that. And this legal professor said that's where the real hay can be made in this argument. He thinks that these lawsuits are going to fail because of how they're attacking it. He said, this is where you need to go. I just thought that was interesting.
I do think it's interesting, and I'm not foreclosing the idea that whatever it is they've alleged he'd done could be interpreted by someone to rise to the level of insurrection. I just don't want it to be a judge in Denver District Court making that decision. It's just not their business. I don't think that's up to them. I think this is a federal issue at a minimum, but it's really a congressional issue. Define it, damn it. You have the power to do it. Define it, and let's just move on. Let's not make it up after the fact. I just think I'm worried because I just don't know this judge. I do know, though, that this judge has engaged in weird decision-making, and I wrote a column on it for the Gazette. You can find it out there, where it was like, listen, while she was pending appointment to the bench, after she had made it to the final three the first time before Judge Polis, she went ahead and contributed money to Weiser and Griswold. And it's like, wait. If she'd made those contributions before she'd ever applied to be a judge, who cares, right? Like, that happens. People are political. But this is a person who was told, you are on the verge. You have a 1 in 3 chance of being a judge. And once she becomes a judge, knows she can't do that. So it was almost like, well, I better sneak these in under the wire. What kind of judgment is that? And then the same thing happened with when she didn't get picked that time. Same thing happened, only now she gave money to a group that advocates that there was an insurrection on January the 6th, and campaigns on Republicans must be defeated and run out of Congress, especially for the congressional delegation. And again, pending her, this is after she was appointed to the bench, but before she took the oath. Now, does that mean she can't be impartial in this? No. Does it mean that people will look at that and go, what? Like, what? Are you the only judge in Denver that could have heard this case? There's no other judge that didn't rush to give contributions to 2 of the parties to this case and weigh in on the ultimate fact of insurrection with another contribution. There's no other judge that could do this. So the judgment thing is an issue. And judges never answer questions. They never, ever answer questions. They're almost like NFL linemen, right? Like, they do not talk to the media, which I think is a mistake. I think there needs to be a greater level of transparency. We could never force it on them. I'd never want a law that says that. I don't want the law to compel anybody to do anything like have to talk to the media. But we ought to be asking these questions of the judges. And I want to hear why. Why did you do it? You'd been appointed to the bench. You wrote this check. Later on, she gave a written statement that just said, apparently I gave this, as if to suggest I didn't know. How many other checks have you written for political purposes that you don't know what you're doing? And how did you make that decision? And there might be an easy explanation, right? Friend that she knows and trusts is like, hey, I'm doing a lot of great work with this wacky group that I'm not going to tell you how wacky they are. You think you could throw us a couple bucks? It wasn't like it was $1 million. It was like $100, right? She's a partner in a giant law firm. $100 is like finding a penny on the ground. It's nothing. But still, you have to scratch it out. You have to put down your identifying information, including your occupation and who you are and where you live, so it can be tracked. This isn't just like you gave someone a C note and walked away. I want to know, why did you do that? And if there's an innocent explanation, the public is entitled to the innocent explanation. And it can't be didn't remember, didn't know. That's not the end of the analysis. The analysis is, why are you writing any checks to any political organizations ever while you're waiting to take the bench? Why are you doing it? That's the hard question. That's the one we don't have an answer to. So if this thing comes down against Donald Trump, if this judge carves out to herself the national attention that comes with being the first ever to keep a person off the ballot, to the cheer of all of those people who want everybody to believe that the elections are fair and free, but we're going to keep your candidates off of the ballot. This will be the thing that people look to and go, well, yeah, but I mean, she was a political activist as she was taking the bench. I'm not telling you that's true. I'm telling you those are the optics she created. I didn't create them. You didn't create them. The media didn't create. She created them. And that's the problem now. I mean, the smartest thing to do here, and the one that I still think complies with the law, is to simply say, there's nothing here that causes me to decide I want to be the person to define what this term means for purposes of keeping a presidential candidate off the ballot, especially not a fringe one, but a legitimate one who was president. I'm not going to be that person. You want to appeal me? Here's the basis for my ruling. That would be the safe, conservative, lowercase c conservative decision. But again, Billy's bigger point, though, and that's the one that's going to get us into this next conversation, is we're more than 3 years removed from the stolen election stuff. And it's not gone. I'm not even sure it's greatly diminished. You have giant mega media companies settling lawsuits for ostensibly lying about different things and never defending on it's the truth, because that's an absolute defense. It's the truth. I didn't say anything wrong. And yet we still have this persistent stuff. And again, the calling card of the conspiracist is the absence of evidence is evidence. No, it's not. My brain doesn't work that way. No prosecutor goes to court. No prosecutor who isn't the AG goes to court on, I know you did something wrong, but I don't have the goods to prove it. So now enter Tina Peters. And we've had Tina on the show multiple times. I've talked with Tina. She's a very nice person. I've always had a decent, respectful conversation with her. But I don't know what's going on out there in Mesa County, but it appears that, and she's been convicted, by the way, of something already, but now the big trials are coming up. I think the feds are investigating her for what she did out there at the clerk and recorder's office with the ballot stuff. And so is Dan Rubenstein. Dan's a friend. I've had Dan on the phone as well here, and I've known Dan for a long time. We were peers together. Dan Rubenstein is a Republican elected DA in a Republican county. And the dude's not some rhino Trumper guy. He's a legit prosecutor, holds people accountable for violating the law, doesn't care about the political ramifications of it, right? He's just some dude that's doing a job. He's got kids that play baseball. I don't know how else to describe it, but this interest in wanting to vilify anybody that takes on these people that we sort of idolize. And Tina has reached that sort of idolizing status with some folks. So he's got a prosecution pending against her. It's been pending for a long time. The feds have been looking into her. All of a sudden now, we have a lawsuit filed yesterday by Tina Peters. It's in the United States District Court for the District of Colorado. You don't have this, but I do. And I know I do because I went and paid money to get it off of the Pacer little web server thing. Because I want to know what's going on. I think this is a matter of great public interest. It is to me, and I know it must be to you too. So in essence here, and I'm making my way through this thing, it is 43 pages, but that's a little fake because half of the last page is just signature block stuff from her attorneys. And it looks like, man, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attorneys. One out of Littleton, a bunch out of Virginia. I presume the one out of Littleton is to allow the pro hoc vice of the 4 out of Virginia. And the pro hoc vice, if you haven't heard me say that before, is when you're not licensed in the state of Colorado, like the 2 special prosecutors that Phil hired to not win any of the lead charges against 2 of the officers in the McLean case. You have to have somebody say, I will supervise them in court, make sure they know the local rules, they follow the law, all that other stuff, act ethically, all that stuff. That's called pro hoc vice. I presume these 2 big hitters that tried the case on Phil's behalf, these guys that have been practicing for 20, 30 years, although not as local prosecutors for 10 minutes and only as federal prosecutors 20 years ago, that those guys were being supervised by the 7-year white collar prosecutor that Phil put on the case. That makes sense. Nonetheless, I think that's what's going on here. So there's a couple different things that this lawsuit is about, and I want to get to those. But at its core, Tina Peters is asking for, and I'm reading this, declaratory and injunctive relief seeking to prohibit the United States and its agents and agents of the state of Colorado from conducting criminal and other proceedings against plaintiff Tina Peters for the unlawful purpose of retaliating against her. And then it goes through a series of things, including claiming that her right to free speech and free association and all that other stuff is being violated. And at the state level, it's being violated through a violation of the 14th Amendment as well. Here's what the complaint says. And I'll continue to go through this with you as I get through it too, because there's a lot to go through here, but I'm going to give you the highlights. The gist of this complaint is Tina Peters is saying there is a federal law that requires me to have auditable records for the election. Jenna Griswold issued an order that says you have to do this trusted build thing. And the trusted build thing would wipe out and erase all of those auditable records that I believe the federal government, through this law, compels me to retain or at least make available. So a couple things. One, Jenna Griswold's order cannot supersede federal law. Second, her efforts to create forensic images of those records in contravention of whatever Griswold's dictates or orders were was consistent with the spirit of the federal law and an attempt to make sure the federal law could be upheld. And therefore, all of these efforts to prosecute her and to punish her and to remove her from office for this are a violation of her rights, because she cannot be prosecuted for trying to follow the federal law, even if it's at odds with the dictates of the Secretary of State's office. That's the gist of what she's saying here. She claims that Dan Rubenstein and Griswold and apparently Merrick Garland, she says in paragraph 4 of this thing, defendants' conduct, they're all defendants, conduct exposes their singular goal of achieving political power and maintaining it. I guess I could see it if you're arguing that it's the whole Biden administration and the Merrick Garland thing and all that other stuff, but they weren't in power when it happened. It must be the maintaining power because they know the election was stolen. But how do you explain Dan Rubenstein? How do you explain Jenna Griswold? Neither of them would have had any consequences from this election being forensically examined, conducted in any other way. Jenna wasn't even on the ballot. Dan was, but I think Dan ran unopposed. So this couldn't have anything to do with their goal of achieving political power and maintaining it, because it doesn't impact them. But there's more. She cites a state statute that requires every designated election official to preserve any election records for a period of at least 25 months after the election. This then becomes the part where she says, I'm trying to comply with federal law. I'm trying to comply with state law, and they won't let me. She says the federal and Colorado statutes requiring election records to be preserved had not yet expired when the trusted build upgrade was scheduled to occur. Here's what's interesting. There are 2 paragraphs that I think are not good for her that she drafted, one of which contains probably an unwitting admission. And in my mind, as we work our way through this thing, you should know there is guilty conduct here. At least someone is acting like they think they're violating the rules and the law. We saw this before with Danielle Jurinsky's case. Do you remember that? If Robin Niceta was truly innocent, had nothing to do, her phone was stolen by Vanessa Wilson and it was used and she had nothing to do with it, there would be no reason at all to fake a brain tumor and impending death to avoid coming back to court to face the music, right? I mean, that's pretty compelling evidence. You faked an illness to avoid coming to court. That says there's a good reason you don't want to go to court, and it's not because you're innocent. There are things in the next paragraphs I will read to you that I find inconsistent and indicative of a huge problem that Tina Peters is going to face in this argument that I was just trying to follow the law. I was just trying to do my job when these bastards, Republicans and Democrats alike, tried to use the legal system to retaliate against me for doing that. I've asked some smart election people to look through it because some of this stuff is just beyond me. It's election-specific law stuff that I could read through, but I won't understand it the way they will. So as they get through this complaint, I'll get to tell you some more information on it. But I'll read you these 2 paragraphs when we come back from a break. I just can't get there yet till I tell you about some people for whom going to visit them is a no-brainer. And that is Doctors Richter and Snyder at Twin Aspen Dental, located right down there at Parker Road and about Stroh, right by Lehman Academy, across Stroh from the big King Soopers complex. So easy to get to. Standalone building. They're not in a strip mall, and I'm not knocking strip malls. I'm saying they're a standalone building. It just exists for you. The building has all of the state-of-the-art modern equipment. I've had x-rays there a couple times now. And they do it in a way I've never had it done before, but in a way that you can tell this is the next version of x-rays with technology. So simple. It's not the biting down, cutting through your gums with that cardboard thing and having to there's a different way they go about doing this, and it's pretty cool. They have a little panorama thing where you bite down on this awkwardly shaped piece that puts, I swear to you, they put a little rubber condomy thing on it, I think for sterility, and you bite down on it, and they have this thing that goes around your head, and they have everything. And the reason they have everything is because they do just about everything. They do all the heavy lifting, the crowns, the bridges, the Invisalign, cosmetic, substantive, name something, and they do it. But the thing that they take pride in is getting their folks in the door for those twice a year checkups and the deplaquification and all the other stuff. And they do it so that you don't have to come back for the big things. These folks are my dentists. I love them. I'm going to keep going back. I'm asking you, just take a knee from your own dentist. It's not disrespectful. You don't owe them anything. They work for you. Take a knee. Say, just one time, I'm going to go try Doctors Richter and Snyder at Twin Aspen Dental. Check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com, twinaspendentalcenter.com. You can give them a call, 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. When you call them, say, hey, this whack job on the radio, George told me he likes you. I'm going to give you a shot. Let them know that. Stick around. We're going to come back. We're going to keep working our way through this. 2 paragraphs that I think are problematic that Tina drafted. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, talking about the Tina Peters lawsuit to stop District Attorney Dan Rubenstein from continuing to prosecute her and to stop Merrick Garland and the U.S. Attorney, I think for the District of Colorado, Cole Finnegan, from continuing to investigate her, not even to try to get to any more facts or the truth. The allegations are that these efforts by these prosecutors and Jenner Griswold are the product of retaliation for her doing things to try to enforce and live up to the federal and state law. It's unusual, but here's the part where I reference this feels like Robin Nicetta to me. And again, suspicious guilty conduct, it seems inconsistent, not completely impossible, but inconsistent with someone who's engaging and believes they're engaging in innocent, lawful behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're wiping your fingerprints off of something where someone says, oh my God, something was just stolen from here, pretty good chance people around you are going to be like, who would wipe their fingerprints off of something? Oh, it's the person who did it, right? Like there's an aspect of this. So listen to these paragraphs. This is paragraph 31 of the complaint. To comply with her legal obligations to preserve election records, Peters lawfully exercised her authority to arrange for a consultant on May 23, 2021, before the upgrade, to make a forensic image of the Mesa County EMS hard drive. A forensic image is a bit-by-bit, non-modifiable, read-only copy of all the digital data stored on a disk drive. That's so interesting. Because if that were what she believed she was doing, engaging in, what did they say, to comply with her legal obligations, there simply would have been no reason to invent an ID card it was identity theft of an actual employee or worker who had access and give it to this forensic examiner and then turn off the cameras that were monitoring the election location, or at least the computer's location. How is that consistent with someone who believes they're following the law? You don't have to cover up evidence of your compliance with the law. That's weird. Here's the other thing that's going to be tough to explain. If she knew at the time and believed at the time that this order by Griswold was inconsistent with her obligations to the federal law at that moment in time, she could have sought an injunction or filed some other type of lawsuit to bring that to the court's attention so that the court could intervene and say, yes, I agree with you. So here's what we've got. The lawsuit that should have been brought 3 years ago, or a little less than 3 years ago, instead of it being brought then, it's brought now after Tina Peters created a false identification card and turned off cameras for someone who was going in to conduct lawful business. Does that, I mean, if you're on a jury, do you sit there and go, that makes total sense to me? I get it. I get it. This novel legal approach seems like it's one that could have been thought of way back in the day without having to create the fake ID and turn off all the cameras. But there's more. So that's paragraph 31. And then there's a couple other paragraphs here. And then we get to paragraph 34. And it talks about after May 26th, after the upgrade with the build and all that other stuff. It says, after the upgrade, Peters again lawfully exercised her authority to arrange for a consultant to make a forensic image of the Mesa County EMS server. I don't know where that authority comes from, by the way, to make sure they're preserved a little bit different. Yeah.
Sorry, question in the back.
Yes. Billy.
Yeah. Did that sentence say lawful?
Yeah, that's right. It said it all. Yeah.
Okay. So
lawfully exercised.
Okay. I'm sorry. And again, I am not the brightest bulb in the drawer, and I'm confused how actions being taken when you're creating a fake ID and then taking the information off site and handing it to somebody
else. We haven't even gotten to that part. We haven't even gotten to the offsite part.
lawful? I
Yeah.
need help.
We'll get there. There's more.
I'm going to go sit over here and
so
just
that's all right.
cry.
No, because there's more facts in this paragraph. At all times, when that consultant was in a secure area, he was supervised by an employee with authorized access in compliance with Election Rule 20.5.3b. That language is interesting because that language is not in paragraph 31 for the first time that she did it. And in not putting it there, what it tells me is they are admitting at a minimum that the first time they had a consultant go in and do this, they were not supervised by an employee with authorized access in compliance with Election Rule 20.5.3 subsection B. That's a problem. When you create two identical series of acts, two identical acts in two paragraphs, but one you distinguish as, here we complied with the law. You are creating the presumption, in at least the perception, that that first time was not in compliance with the same law. But again, I presume the person she's talking about that was an employee with authorized access is someone we now know is a co-defendant in this particular case. That's a problem. Then this is the part Billy's talking about that, again, I don't know where the law permits this, right? Like, this is election data. This is sensitive information. We don't just put this up on a website somewhere. But here's what happens. Paragraph 36. Upon receiving the forensic images, Peters provided them to cybersecurity expert Douglas W. Gould. She also provided them to Walter C. Doherty, and who's got a doctorate in education, and Jeffrey O'Donnell. None of those people are employees of the state. None of those people, I presume, have any of the clearances or anything that take place when you are an authorized election person. So the question in my mind is, what law authorizes her to take this information that does not belong to her? At best, it belongs to the clerk and recorder's office, and give it to private citizens for them to monkey around with. Where is that? That's going to be a problem. Because in this, she admits, I did this. How is that in compliance with the law? Does the federal law say not just you must maintain this information in an auditable format, but you may conduct any audit of your choosing and provide the information to any person you choose? I don't know who drafted this, but it seems to me that they are caught up in the narrative and yet they've lost the plot. And the plot here is, this is a person who acted like they were violating the law. And their goal was to get anybody outside the system to look at the information and then announce, aha, we've discovered it. The election was stolen. And somehow then that would make everything that she did okay. Maybe setting up a potential choice of evils defense, which, by the way, has been offered in this case and rejected by the court. And that's, by the way, only through the first quarter of this complaint. She then goes into, and I don't see the phrase stolen election yet, but she does say that these three guys, whoever they are, did their analysis and they discovered a, quote, unusual phenomenon that occurred during both November 2020 general election and the April 21st Grand Junction municipal elections, end quote. And it goes through and tries to talk about what that unusual phenomenon was. She then concludes this calls into question the integrity of the vote counting process and the validity of the election results. Unfortunately, neither of those things, even if they were facts, can help explain turning off the cameras, creating a fake ID, and giving this sensitive state-owned, and by state I mean government-owned information to just people to do with as they choose. Yeah, I'd be interested to know if she had any contracts with them. That might make it seem more legitimate. A contract between the clerk and recorder's office with certain guarantees that this would remain confidential and here's how it goes. Even though I'm not sure that she could legally do it, that would at least tell you where her head was. Best guess, without knowing the discovery and seeing this trial until info, best guess, she just gave it to them. She just gave them the information. That's weird. That's super weird. And that's not the conduct of someone who thinks they're engaging in lawful or enforcement of the law. She also says the making and dissemination of the forensic images violated no statute, administrative regulation, rule, or order in existence at any relevant time. She's saying, it's okay, I did that. I could have given it to a bum. I could have given it to Xi Jinping, and it wouldn't matter. That's part of the defense. That wasn't against the law. I could do it to anything I want. Give it to anybody I want. She talks about an election order that Griswold gave, and that this is a quote from paragraph 60. Election order 2021-02 served to humiliate Peters and make her unpopular with voters by requiring Mesa County to purchase a new voting system. Yeah, I don't know about that. So they go into the fact that this must be a stolen election without ever using that phrase. They intimate at it. There were these anomalies, which are incredibly irrelevant to the argument about whether or not she was complying with the law. It's so irrelevant that had she provided them this data and they came back and said, no, everything looks good, it would be the exact same prosecution against her. So the fact that she's suggesting in these paragraphs that there's some sort of an election anomaly and, oh my God, maybe she discovered something. By the way, nobody has offered this in any of the lawsuits by Dominion against these people that have made these claims, Fox included. Nobody's come forward and says, I'm defending on the grounds of truth. Not that I'm aware of. They're just settling the lawsuits for jillions. That's very, very interesting. There's a lot more to this complaint, but you've got the gist of it there. I'm anxious to get an expert on this and see what they say about it. I've reached out to some folks that know their business here, and I want to see if they've gone through the complaint, if they can sort of answer some of the things that are in here, because I want to know, what is the status of the law? What are the rules? How bizarre is this behavior? But you and I don't have to be election law experts to know that this is a person who acted like they were violating the law. Acted like they were violating the law. Why turn off the cameras? Somebody call and tell me why turning off the cameras is consistent with following the law. Somebody tell me why it was necessary to make a fake ID card and how that is consistent with following and enforcing the law. Why would you need to do that? 303-696-1971. We've got Frank on the line. Others, there's another line open. You can give that a call. A couple lines open right now. You can give that a call. Fill those things up. I've got some text coming in here. It's interesting. Bunch of people passionate about this topic, and one person not that excited. Just a series of Z's. I don't know why that is. This seems like kind of a big deal, but maybe it's just me because I'm the former prosecutor guy who cares about the Republic. Someone who cares about you, and they haven't met you yet. But they have a product, a procedure out there that they want you to call them about. It's QC Kinetics. These are folks who got in the business of alleviating pain and restoring freedom. Yeah, not the freedom like under the Constitution freedom, but the freedom that comes with living a pain-free life. The freedom that comes with being able to say, yeah, I'll go on that hike with you. Or yeah, I'll go on the walk around the block with the dog with you. I'll go up and down all these stairs at this museum or on this trip. I'll do all of these things because I saw QC Kinetics and they used me through regenerative medicine to fix me in my knees, in my hips, in any of the other joints where either the warranty has run out or some injury has claimed the good parts of that piece. You got to give these folks a call. Local medical professionals, not in some far off country, people right here at 303-900-8986, and grill them, ask them questions. Hey, I heard George talking about you. Tell me why I should trust you. Tell me what others have said about this. Where can I go to see these testimonials? How does this procedure work? Where's the science behind this? And there's buckets of science behind this. Call them, grill them, 303-900-8986. You can start at qckinetics.com, but I would never stop right there. You stop when you're satisfied, and I wouldn't be satisfied until you have the conversation with them. So give them a call, 303-900-8986. That's our friends at QC Kinetics. When we come back, your calls, your text, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
What kind of straits? A little bit dire right here on George Show 710 Canyon. Let's going to get right to the phone lines here. Frank from Golden, you're on 710. Frank, what do you think?
Hey, George. Now, I'm going to try to see if I can get my head around this. Okay, so
Good luck.
This recent lawsuit filed by Tina Peters is to try to enjoin her prosecutions. Right?
And investigations. Yep, and further investigations.
And investigations. And basically, what you've been saying is basically stuff that would be along the lines of defenses to the criminal prosecutions. They aren't themselves a basis for anything separate and apart, like an injunction. There's things that she should be raising in the criminal prosecutions to defend her action.
Isn't that so super insightful? You must know something about the law.
And riddle me this. Well, yeah. I mean, this is what these attorneys are just they're an embarrassment to the profession. But here's another thing that bothers me a little bit. Okay, Tina Peters, even though she's ridiculous in every aspect, she still has a right against self-incrimination.
Absolutely.
In the criminal cases.
Yeah.
Now, so here, in trying to enjoin prosecution and investigation, where she could be asserting her right against self-incrimination, she's either going to assert that now when asked about this, because she'll be deposed. She should be deposed right away. And she's either going to assert that Fifth Amendment or she's going to waive it in this case. And therefore, teeing her up for all the same meatless, baseless things that you just pointed out in the criminal case. So I assume these attorneys have explained that to her or something.
I don't know if that's happened, but certainly they've opened the door for that. And Frank, I think you've succinctly put that together for folks too. The risks here are huge. Thank you for the call, man, and always the legal insight on that. I think Frank's right. I don't think this thing survives, by the way, to get to depositions, but Frank's right, man. She could be deposed. Now what? Hey, stick around. We got the state demographer next. Get the popcorn ready. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the Hour 3. That means we're halfway through the Thursday show right here on 710 KNUS. My name is George. I think that's why they call it the George Show. We're about to do something very, very special here. It's an inauguration of sorts of a technology that for many of you has existed for a long time. For us here in the radio world, we're just breaking the seal on this thing. It still has the new technology smell, if you can get that. I've got this little bit of a sound clip to set this up. Coming up, our very first ever. I don't even know what the technology is. Zoom? Is it Zoom? Hold on. Let me try that again. Our first ever Zoom interview. If you're on the YouTubes or the Rumbles, it's Elizabeth Garner. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I can hear you. I don't know if you know this. We've tried this a couple times in the past. This is magic. I can see you. I can hear you. Can you see me?
I can.
I'm so
Good
sorry.
Morning.
Good morning. First off, let me begin with the easy stuff, and that is it's Elizabeth. So do you go by Easy E, Liz, Betsy, some version of that, or is it just straight up, I go by Elizabeth?
I go by Elizabeth.
Okay, great. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I will call you Easy E. No, I'm kidding. I see you here are not just our state demographer for how long now?
20 years.
In a row. You didn't take any time off to go count something else?
No. I've thought about it, but I've just been counting people.
Now, listen, when you were a kid playing around, first off, did you grow up in Colorado? Where was home originally?
I did. I grew up in Denver, southeast Denver off of I-25 in Hamden.
Wait a minute. Were you a TJ kid? Where was high school for you?
I was. That's where I went to high school.
Oh, and Mark Crowley, who's our tech guy you've been working with, just threw up his arm. It was either a power to the people moment or he too is a big fan of the TJ. Mark went to TJ as well. He went there just a couple years before you did, Elizabeth. He went back when it looked a lot more like Little House on the Prairie. But now you made the decision when you were a kid to grow up to do something. Did you ever think it would be this?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wanted to be actually in business or in economic development.
Okay.
So it's a state demographer, maybe not too far away from economic development, but no, it just kind of fell into my lap.
So undergrad, that wasn't here. You did undergrad somewhere else?
Undergrad in San Diego.
Now, I've heard of it. Stephen Tubbs, formerly of 710 KNUS, is a big fan of San Diego, but I'm sure it's still a good place to go. Was it a good place to get an education?
So I went to the University of San Diego. So it was a small kind of Catholic university up on the hill. So it was absolutely beautiful. I think it's got top 10 most beautiful campuses in the country. It was a great place, and they did what I would say a holistic education. So it was, even though I was a business degree, I got a lot of everything.
So then you took that and you came back here to your home state of Colorado and you shunned the top university in the state. That's the University of Colorado Boulder, Go Buffs. And instead you went where?
I went to CSU. I went to Colorado State University. But I will tell you, I was in the Peace Corps for 3 years prior to that, and worked.
You picked one of the roughest places on the planet to do the Peace Corps. Where was it?
It was Costa Rica.
Okay.
Now, just mind you, I had no choice in it. They assigned it to me, but I did small business development. I worked with small entrepreneurs. So it was fantastic.
That's really cool. That's cool. As the father of a daughter who is interested in doing the Peace Corps when she finishes up her undergrad too, I would like her to get Costa Rica because Dad would love to find a way to go visit her during her whatever the heck it is she's doing. She's also interested. She's getting a degree in part in economics. She too is interested in the economic development stuff. Her focus though, her passion really is how do we help women in countries that maybe don't have opportunities like we have here to try to get to a place where they're more, economically viable and all that stuff.
That's exactly what I did.
Well, I'm going to have to put her in touch with you if you don't mind.
You should.
I'll do it.
You should. I would love to chat with her. And I highly recommend the Peace Corps.
She's already sold on it. I also wanted to do the Peace Corps, but the Army said, no, you've already signed up with us. So I did whatever that is. That's the not Peace Corps, whatever that is. Now, I asked you to come on because there was a big article in the paper last week or so talking about a big I guess it's the state demographers conference or a summit or a symposium or something. What is that?
Right. So annually, we hold our annual demography summit. It was our 41st on the 3rd of November. And we get together with a whole bunch of people that care about population change and want to understand who Colorado is and present information about our estimates, our forecasts, what are some of the constraints, challenges that Colorado faces, because everybody needs to understand what's happening to Colorado's population in order to plan for anything, whether it's business, transportation, public services, you name it, you need to know who's here.
Now, from the radio guy's standpoint, I presume just based on the subject matter, it was open bar and free sample gummies during much of the presentation. Is that true? Was there a lot of that going on?
Hey, come on.
Now, listen, I'm kidding.
There are nerds out there.
I'm kidding because this information I found interesting enough that I was like, let's go get Elizabeth. Let's go get her in here. We'll reject the whole CSU thing, but we'll get her on. We'll have the conversation. Now, there were some huge takeaways here, and I know that the part I didn't really focus on was this was important for businesses and probably builders and real estate and all this to try to figure out where should we be doing what at what pace, all these other things. But give us some of the takeaways that you found most interesting and important for Coloradans to know about the changing population.
So, I think there are a couple of big ones. One, we are transitioning. We are actually slowing down in terms of our growth, and most of our growth is in our older age group. So the whole United States is slowing down in terms of growth, and primarily due to a slowing in births. We've seen a slowing in births since 2007. Now that peak age group that was born is 16, so really after 16, we're slowing down. So that impacts Colorado. We're having to compete for the best and the brightest more heavily than we have before because it's harder. Everybody's looking for the best and the brightest.
Now, beyond just observing that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but beyond making that observation, which makes a lot of sense, do you then go and dig into why is this happening? Nationwide, I get the, do we dig into why is the birth rate slowing for Colorado, or why is the aging population blowing up for us?
Absolutely. So we want to understand if we're different and how we're different from the U.S. as a whole, or if this is a national trend that we're just moving through with everybody else. And I would say that Colorado's a mix of both. The slowing birth rate is something that the U.S. has seen as a whole. Our total fertility rate is 1.6 for the U.S., 1.5 for Colorado, meaning a woman over her life would have 1.6 kids, 1.5 kids, depending U.S., Colorado. But replacement is 2.1. So we know that that is having an impact on the United States. If we're having fewer kids, we're replacing fewer that then are passing.
Well, you'll be happy to know that both Billy and I have far exceeded that amount. We're good for 4 kids each. So you're welcome with the numbers. Anyway.
And so that makes a big difference, right, on K-12, higher ed, labor force, thinking about how we're going to be competing. And other states slowed down sooner. Colorado was slower to the party in terms of slowing down, but we are, growing slower. And there were about half of the states in the country had an absolute decline in their under 18 population over the last decade. So this impacts like CU, who you seem to be a big fan of. I am, but
yeah.
Go Prime. I love CU simply because I'm from Colorado, but CSU is bomb.
Look, truth be told, my son is a freshman at CSU, so
Oh yay! Yeah, congrats.
He picked CSU over CU, and Daddy hasn't spoken to him since, but I love him. No, I'm kidding. He's one of my 4 favorite.
Good. But that has an impact on higher ed because Colorado attracts a lot of out-of-state students to higher ed. They pay that out-of-state tuition. With the number of kiddos shrinking in the U.S., it's making it harder and harder for some of our universities to attract kids and get that out-of-state tuition to help pay Colorado's higher ed system.
When you look at those numbers and the changing numbers, does it also take into consideration, and I'm going to use the wrong words, but the immigration and out migration, or whatever terms you use for people coming and going in the varying age groups too? Or is this just straight up, you live here, you have kids here?
No, we absolutely look at migration is a combination of both in and out. Immigration would be international.
Okay.
So we look at domestic net migration, which has definitely changed. But that is a big piece of, typically Colorado attracts a lot of young adults. 22 to 37 is our bread and butter. But that also, we do see a lot of in-migration for the college student age group as well.
When you look at that migration number, and maybe it's also immigration, but how much of what we're seeing, if it's measurable, are folks coming to us like we've seen right now in Denver, a huge refugee population making its way up from the southern border, whether they're from Venezuela or wherever else, and they relocate here, some maybe temporary, some not temporary. Do they get factored in, and how do you do that?
Absolutely, they get factored in. And whether it is refugees, so which are counted, so we'll get numbers from the U.S. in terms of that international refugee population that either is transient, so comes here for a bit and then resettles somewhere else, or those that resettle here. So during that transition, they probably aren't counted here until they hit a final spot. That you have to say that you lived here for a year to really count that you're here. So, I mean, you don't have to be here for the entire year, but you have to think that Colorado is your residence, not that you're, sitting in one of the, I don't want to call them halfway houses, but, where a lot of refugees have been just hanging until they figure out where they're going next.
If they show up and they've only been here a few months, and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing next, do we count them? Or if they say, hey, I've only been here a couple months, but I intend to stay, do we count them? I mean, and what I'm trying to find is, what's that size of uncounted population there? Or that.
Right. So we typically try and count them. If they plan on making Colorado their home, then we do. But if they're saying, no, I don't want to be here, Mike's got family in Illinois, then we don't count them here. But we definitely have a group that are uncounted or undocumented. And people always ask, well, how big is that undocumented?
How do we estimate
I'm like,
that?
there is no document to count that undocumented. So it's really uncertain what that number is. And it will vary every year depending on kind of what the international conflicts are, what the international economy is like. During the Great Recession, we saw a huge slowdown in international migration to the United States because the United States wasn't doing that well.
Yeah.
There weren't jobs available. So it's definitely this kind of supply demand often for that, especially the maybe illegal immigration, and then international conflict that impacts the refugee population.
I think what I hear you advocating for is we don't need to build a wall. We just need to gut the economy, and then we can solve a lot of our. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. People can see you're smiling here if they're watching.
Do you really want to say that?
You've been doing this now 20 years. Can you give us a sense of the trend, both in the population that we estimate for the undocumented, but also the refugees? Like, what are we seeing those numbers doing?
So we definitely saw a slowdown. Well, I'll go back historically. We saw a huge increase in the 90s. But if you remember the 90s, that's where really the whole U.S. was doing really well and Colorado was doing really well in terms of job growth. We were building a lot, and so we did see this large influx of international migration, especially for the construction industry. And typically when they come, they're young, and then they meet other young people, and they will then have families here. So a lot of times now what we're seeing in terms of the growth of our diverse population has to do with the migration that we saw back in the 90s. Now their kids are here and part of our society, part of our communities. Since the 90s, we did see a slowdown. We've had a couple of blips in Colorado's economy. We saw the .com bust in the early 2000s, and then we saw the Great Recession. both of those had a big downward pressure on international migration to Colorado. Recently, we saw then COVID, borders were closed. We saw very little immigration to the United States and to Colorado. Since COVID is kind of subsided, so for 2022, 23, we've started to see an increase in the refugee population here. But I would say a typical amount, and what we were seeing pre-COVID is right around 10,000 a year in international migration, with a combination of both legal and illegal.
And that hasn't changed wildly in the last few years?
So again, we're back at, in 22, we got back up to that 10,000. In 2019, it was about 10,000.
So we're right there.
2020 and we're right there. It decreased from basically during the whole Great Recession, and then started picking up a little bit starting in 1819.
What is the percentage of native-born Coloradans, as opposed to coming from any other state or country? What's happened to that over the last 20 years? Yeah, well.
Very few, about 43% were born in Colorado of our current residents.
How has that changed over the last 10 or 20 years? What was it when we were kids?
So it's actually stayed about the same.
Really?
Colorado has really always attracted a lot of people from other states. And remember, a lot of Colorado-born people leave as well. So we've got this churn, and I think Colorado is open to churning. And I missed what you said.
I called them traitors, but nonetheless, just to the state. That's all right.
Right.
So that's fascinating to me. I did not expect you to answer that way. In my mind, I just pictured our Colorado of our youth. And for me, that was the early 2000s. I'm kidding. Was that it was just
right?
Yeah, it was just much more Cowtown metro area. We're all kind of from here. Every once in a while, a Texan shows up and tries to ski, that kind of thing. But it sounds like it's always kind of been this ratio of in-state, natives versus not.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the 90s and a little bit before the 90s, you might have seen it up closer to 50%. But, these different economic booms that we've had in the state have brought in folks from out of state. So we had in the 60s into the 70s, we saw an expansion of the federal center. We expanded I-70 through the tunnels.
Oh, yeah.
That created this huge growth in the mountain counties, which a lot of the people that came from out of state for that development, for that growth on the west slope. Within the Denver metro, we've always really attracted a lot of people from out of state because we're kind of a regional center. In the Rocky Mountain West, people from, Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico would all come to Colorado, whether it was for higher ed or what it was maybe for the job growth
or just to be
that we were experiencing in Colorado. From but our relative job growth is very strong, and we create more jobs than we have people here to fill.
I am hopeful that you have enough time for us to take a quick break, come back. I want to ask you questions about what we're seeing in terms of who are the states that are the net donors to us versus net recipients, that kind of stuff, because I find that fascinating, especially as we're having this conversation about who is native born and who isn't. And then I'll ask you about your love of Tabor. No, I'm kidding. I'll never ask you about Tabor. I will never ever ask you about Tabor. We're talking with Elizabeth Garner. Can you stick around, by the way? I should ask.
I can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're talking with Elizabeth Garner. Folks, this is groundbreaking for us. Everyone else on the planet has probably been doing this for 100 years or so, but not us here at 710. This is our first interview that we're doing with video. Elizabeth Garner, the state demographer, has foolishly agreed to be the test case for this. And I think it's because of the CSU education. They don't teach you the common sense stuff up there, like say no to 710. Nonetheless, she's trapped here now on the video, powerless to do anything about it. So stick around, watch the YouTubes, get on the Rumbles, anything you can throw a "the" in front of that's social media, get on that thing and you can see us there. When we come back, it's going to be more Elizabeth Garner, more me. And then we're going to ask you to chime in with some of your questions, both on text and otherwise. I just can't break away till I tell you about Roll 'em Out Shelves. Brent and Joyce Tolliver. Brent's the son. Joyce is the mom. They do this fantastic thing where they come out to your house. They look at everything that has a cabinet, and they say, we can make it more efficient. And I know, as a guy who's been on his knees in the kitchen, digging back into some dark crevice, looking for that I use it once or twice a year utensil or pot or pan that exists for one type of food. What a pain in the butt that is. These folks make your kitchens efficient. They do the roll them out shelves. They can do it in your kitchen, in your bathroom, in your laundry room. They even said garage. I'm going to have them come out to my house and take a look around after I've cleaned it up of all the DNA and stuff that boys produce when they live in a house. And then we're going to bring them in when it's safe and have them take a look around. You do the same thing. If you do that, by the way, you have them come out. Your first 4 installations of the roll them out shelves are free. That's like an $80 value. These folks have 5-star ratings and only 5-star ratings. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you can be at 100% unless you're me or Billy. And so that's really fascinating. I think you ought to be a part of that 5-star review process too. Call them at 303-475-9601. 303-475-9601. You can check them out at rollemoutshelves.com. There's little hyphens between all the words, and M is EM. Rollemoutshelves.com. You Google it, you'll find it. Come on back. It's me. It's the state demographer. The rough upbringing right there by TJ in Costa Rica. We're going to explore the traumatic scars that has left on her psyche and the impact on the population of the state of Colorado when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here at 710 KNUS. Welcoming back to both the sound and the video. Check us out on YouTube. I'm sorry, the YouTube and the Rumble. We're right there with the state demographer. That's Elizabeth Garner. She has been answering some awesome questions, giving us facts that I disagree with. No, I'm kidding. I don't really have any basis to disagree. I just thought I would do it. Thank you for joining us, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much for having me.
Do we call you a different title? Like if you are, elected to the legislature, we call you representative or senator. If you have a PhD, we call you a doctor. What do we call you?
Just Elizabeth.
Not like Demo Elizabeth or something like that?
Nope, nothing. Just Elizabeth.
How long do you continue to do this before you're either removed from office for misconduct or you simply just get bored and leave? And I don't even know what either of those look like, Yeah,
I was going to say, I hope that the misconduct part never happens, right?
Well, it's like, I feel like it's going to be something like someone comes in and says, you've been double counting Protestant toddlers this whole time, Elizabeth. Now you've skewed all of our numbers. I don't know if that's possible. I'm just bringing that up as the only thing I can think of.
Nah, I think we're pretty good. I've got a team too that keeps me in line. So, we've got everybody checking numbers, double checking so that we do this right.
Yeah, there's the one person on your team, and I don't know who it is, but you do, that always shows up to every meeting announcing it's happy hour somewhere. That's the person that you need to have as your number two. Let's get back to the numbers piece. We were talking about migration and immigration. The migration piece I found fascinating too, because I want to know who's coming here to replace the people that leave. Like what states are like net donors to us versus what we give to them?
I bet you could guess. So who do you think, which state would you think are the top two?
Maine? Is it not Maine? Based on your reaction, I feel like Maine was now a foolish choice. I'm going to guess it rhymes with California.
Yep.
Is that number one?
One of them.
Is that number one? Is California number one?
So it's number one, but I will tell you it goes back and forth every year with our number two.
Number two, of course, is Nebraska for obvious reasons. People don't want to live there. No, I'm kidding. I said that for our listeners in Nebraska. But number two, Texas?
Yep.
That's so interesting.
Yep. So migration is really driven a lot by size, right? These are two of our largest states. So they're going to have the largest number of people that leave or that move.
Thank you for saying that. I thought you were talking about the size of the people leaving. Like the heavy people end up coming here from Texas and California. So awkward.
So awkward. And then our other top five are also really big states. So we've got then Florida and New York.
Got it.
Which also are our largest donors. And then we've got Arizona. I will tell you also, we often get Illinois is in that same group.
The S remains silent, apparently. Go ahead.
So that's where we see our largest donors coming from. Again, size makes a difference. So the big states will be some of the biggest donors, but also proximity. So like Arizona is another one that would have a large relationship. In terms of out, though, those are also our largest out migration locations as well.
Interesting.
So Texas, California, Florida, Arizona, and then we'll throw in like a New Mexico has been a recent place where we've seen out migration to.
Breaking Bad.
As well as Wyoming, Montana, Washington, Oregon. So we see a lot of people leaving Colorado and kind of going north and west.
When we talk about percent, like, so for those big states, I imagine they're the biggest donor states for a whole bunch of places. They get people, Texas and California.
Right.
Where do we rank for them? Like, are we their number one export state? Do you guys look at that?
No.
Okay. Can you do that while we're on air?
Anywhere close.
No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah, we're not anywhere close to their top because, again, Colorado is relatively small. I know we
think we are. Yeah, we think we're being overrun by Californians. I do.
Right. And we think that we're the center of the universe.
We're close.
And neither is the case. So we're typically in the top 10, but we're not the number one location for any of these places.
Have those numbers or percentages changed over the years? Have we become less or more attractive based on what you're seeing to either those states or any others?
So things do change over time. A lot of it is really driven by the economy and the economy in that location. So we have seen over time with California, for example, in the 80s, when they were having a lot of earthquakes, we would see a lot larger number of people coming into Colorado. During the fires recently, we've seen a lot of people coming in from California. So we'll ebb and flow depending on the conditions in whatever state they're coming from. So we've seen actually a larger increase recently from some of the states in the Midwest. So Illinois, Michigan, because their economy hasn't been as strong as Colorado. So we'll start to see a increase from there. But Colorado also loses people. And when we had like the .com bust, we saw a pretty big slowdown in both, definitely a slowdown on the in-migration to Colorado. During in the early or the late 80s, early 90s, where we had the savings and loan and oil and gas bust, we saw a large out-migration from Colorado. So a lot of it really is dependent on economic conditions that drives why people move.
I've got some text questions here, but I still want to follow up on this thread a bit. Let's do a Mythbusters thing. Now, 2012, as you recall, the state voted to regulate recreational marijuana, legalize recreational marijuana, if you will. And there is this sense that when that went live in 2014, like in that period of time, right before that and shortly thereafter, all of a sudden we got a huge influx of people, presumably seeking the free weed and all that other stuff, because we were first out of the gate with that. Did you ever look at that? Did you see anything that would be consistent with that theory?
Yes, we did follow that very closely because we were curious ourselves. And we did see a spike actually in 2015 where we saw more growth in that year than leading up to it, which again was, we were trying to recover from the Great Recession. But then even after 2015, we've seen a slowdown.
Do we know from what state we saw the biggest bubble, that biggest surge? Was there one particular state that stood out, or was there an area of the state that seemed to get the biggest influx? Anything like that? And how many of them are in the legislature now? No, I'm kidding. You don't have to answer the last question, but the first two.
That would be just a second. Let me.
Yeah, sure. No. I want you to be mostly accurate.
But the big piece that we also need to remember is that it was a big job generator. We think that only people were coming to partake, but they didn't have to live here to partake, right? They could come visit, leave. But we grew a lot of jobs in that industry. And whether you were in the grow facilities or in the retail or in the testing, it created a lot of jobs that we could see that drove a lot of the migration as well. So actually in 2015 and 2016, it didn't change on our biggest donors. So it was still California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, Arizona were in our top group.
Again, I don't want to turn this hyper political, but you can't have a conversation about anything these days without referencing the RDU thing. Do you guys measure, or do you have the ability to measure folks that have come into the state that affiliate one way or the other?
So we don't follow that. So we can't really tell you on the politics side. You'd have to check with the Secretary of State's office that does more on the what people. But I mean, if you think about how we sometimes characterize states, I mean, with California, Texas,
very Republican. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah.
We get then Florida, Illinois. So we're actually, a lot of our donor states, we end up with a purple mix from the donor states.
Do you ever, I guess you probably don't have the ability or interest in doing exit interviews for folks, but do you guys look into reasons that justify the number of folks that go and where they go, or is it just we're observing this phenomenon?
So we don't get a lot of great data to, on where people end up, because then we'd have to look at every single state to understand who left. But there are some surveys that are done so we can get a pretty good idea of who are the entrants and leavers. And they actually tend to be very similar. Our entrants tend to be young adults. Our leavers tend to be young adults. Some of the folks, as I mentioned before, where they go is often where they're coming from. So we see, like I said before, Texas, California, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico were in the top group of our leaver states. We have started to see recently a little bit of an uptick in leavers that are older adults, so 65 plus. We're making some assumptions there that they're leaving to either chase grandkids or they're looking to retire potentially in states that are lower cost. A lot of people have, lived here for a bit. If they bought homes back in the 80s, 90s, they've seen a lot of appreciation in home values, so they're able to sell those homes with a lot of appreciation, buy somewhere else and leverage that. So there's, probably as many reasons as there are people in terms of leavers.
We're talking with Elizabeth Garner. She's the state demographer. We've talked a lot about the stuff that's the macro stuff, in my opinion, in and out of the state. Have you, based on this symposium thing that you guys do on this annual basis, the 41st one just recently, what are the things that are going on within the state? What are the areas where we're seeing increase, decrease, the population stuff, and why does it matter to the average Coloradan?
So the reason why, I'm of the belief that it's really important to understand the whys behind the what. And so we have seen historically, or, recent history, that a lot more growth along the Front Range relative to the rest of the state. So if you look Eastern Plains, San Luis Valley, Western Slope, hasn't been as strong growth.
Is that different, by the way, from the last 10 to 20 years, Elizabeth, or is that pretty consistent, or is it a change at all, or?
So it was a change. The last decade was a change. It was very highly concentrated. 95% of our growth in population, as well as jobs, was in the Front Range.
Wow.
And a lot of it had to do with the jobs that we're growing. We're growing a lot of service jobs, so professional business service, healthcare, social assistance are in our top two fastest growing industries. And those both are very connected to population centers. So we're seeing faster growth in areas where there's more people. We're also seeing within our counties, larger counties getting larger, smaller counties getting smaller, but the counties that have been growing the fastest have actually been in that mid-range, not our big Denvers and El Pasos, but in our second growth tier states or counties like Weld, Douglas, Mesa, Garfield, that are, greater than 20,000, but not above 100,000.
Douglas County, of course, is tier one in our hearts. Douglas County is number one in our hearts, but that's just where I live. Tell me what you think is coming. Now, some of this has to be projections too, right? Like you are trying to read the tea leaves and tell folks, this is not just what we've seen up to this point, but this is where I think we're going. What are those things?
So some of them are, they are projections, but they're of characteristics that we can easily follow. So like age. We are pretty sure that if you were 22 this year, next year you're going to be 23.
Wait, slow down. Say that again. Say that again. No, I'm kidding.
Hard for you, is it?
It's a CSU thing. I get it. It's
hey. But the reason you had to ask was a CU thing.
Good one. She gives as good as she takes, folks.
So one of the biggest things that we're seeing is the growing population that are over 65. A lot of that had to do with the number of baby boomers that came here in the 70s and 80s. They've now aged into the 65 plus. They are starting to retire from the labor force. So we're seeing this large number of leavers from the labor force and a large growth in our 65 plus. And even over this next decade, between 2020 and 2030, we're forecasting 50% of our growth will be in our 65 plus.
Oh, wow.
We know then characteristics of people that age typically leave the labor force at some point as they age. It could be 50, it could be 70, but we know that they leave. So those leavers from the labor force, where we're forecasting about 400,000 this decade, we're going to forecast then they need to have replacements for those jobs. Now, not every job is going to be replaced. We know that. AI and other things will keep every single job from a retiree from being replaced, but we know that that demand will be there. Plus, we're creating new jobs, and we know that those are going to need people. So that's not a lot of projecting. That a lot of this is very common sense. And so new jobs are going to require people. Old jobs, so retirees, from retirees leaving, are going to require jobs. Plus, we know that there's this then remote worker phenomenon coming in, and we don't know how that's going to require people. So we know from those fundamentals that we're going to require more migration to the state, or we're going to have to deal with the fact that some jobs are just not going to be filled.
Something else that strikes me is that, we've got this housing scarcity issue that's nuts. That this has got to be something that weighs upon builders, but they also have to be anticipating too, like, look, as we're building, do we need to focus on housing that is more amenable to that older population, or do we expect them to leave, or are we building for a younger population? I mean, some of this stuff it sounds like would be pretty critical to folks making decisions about big financial outlays in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And builders do follow population trends and job growth trends. One of the biggest challenges that we had was during the Great Recession, we stopped building, but we kept growing our population. And so that's what's created this supply-demand mismatch and this tight supply in housing. Is Colorado, as well as other states, also didn't build. So we're trying to build our way out of it currently. We started building back at that level. It's about 40,000 units a year back in 2018. So we're just still building at that same level.
Wow.
But we're trying to make up for the 10 years prior to that, from basically 2008 through 2018, where we didn't build.
I hear you advocating for real reform in construction defect law. Is that what you're saying? No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to ask you to take that policy position as the state demographer. Just throwing that out there. And I'm sorry to have cut you off. You were talking housing.
No, but I mean, I think it's important to be able to look. One, I do think builders need to pay closer attention to what's going on in terms of characteristics and demand and need. It's really easy to do things the way you've always done it, because you know that creates an important bottom line for you. But we also need to be recognizing this tremendous growth, really in the 65 plus, very slow growth in our entrance. So maybe slow down on the apartments, maybe increase the condos. I'm not taking a position on builder defect, but it's just practical. Right? We need to understand who's going to be here and where we see that growth. Now, with the older adults, not a lot of older adults end up downsizing. We think that they should, but they don't. They age in place. They love their home. They love their neighborhood. They love their friends around them. And so not as many downsize as you would think do. And that might be something that we look at as a state, is how do we make it easier for older adults to downsize? How do we provide more education and training for folks on how to really plan for retirement and aging to where it works well for their family and works well for them?
Listen, I love this interview. I could keep doing this all day because I just have so many questions. I texted in and said, hey, can you ask her about homeless and all this? I want to, but we're out of time. I pushed this thing so far. If you had the camera on Billy, you would see him giving me the bird right now, saying you must get off the air. Elizabeth Garner, she's the state demographer. She has overcome the CSU education as well as the TJ high school experience to become someone who has all the good information out there for the state of Colorado. We hope we can bring you back, especially when you have cool stuff. Oh, I know. Tell folks how they can find out some of the information that you guys produce, where they can go to find that.
Perfect. So you could always just Google Colorado demographics, and we are in that top couple of hits that you would see because nobody else wants that URL. Or it's demography.dola.colorado.gov. And we've got a great website with a ton of information.
It's funny because I have demagoguery .dola. No, I'm kidding. If people wanted to text you in the middle of the night, what's that number? I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. We're not going to give that up.
One.
It's one that begins with 911. You're like 911 3274. They never get to the last four. Elizabeth Garner, thanks. I hope we get to have you on again. I hope this was fun. You were our first. You were our very first video thing. I thought it was hugely successful.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. And this was great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Elizabeth Garner, State Demographer, tons of good information there. Happy to take your calls, your texts on it with the limited time that we have left now that I've blown up the hour. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. There is no perfect segue when you follow up with a superstar like our very first Zoom interview with Elizabeth Garner. She's the state demographer for our state, Colorado. We talked a lot about real estate. What a great segue into Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. They're the super folks out there who, my guess is to the real estate planet also pays really close attention to the demography stuff. And if you recall, when we had Gay in the studio just a few weeks ago, she was super keen on knowing where still some of the best buys are in the metro area and up and down the Front Range. And that's because they've been doing it for decades. They are so confident in their skills and their knowledge of what they're doing. They do things others don't. They will give you a handshake and a signed promise. We will sell your house for the amount we agree upon. And if we don't, we will pay you in cash. The difference. Who does that? That's either incredibly reckless or it's spot on. These people can't be reckless and have been in the business for decades. They keep making families happier by getting them out of the houses they no longer need or want and into the houses that they do. All you have to do is check them out at sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. It's 4 words, sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. You can also give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. When we come back, he's the assistant minority leader for the State House. His name is Mike Lynch. He's going to update us on all the things that are going on. Special session, folks. It's coming this week. He's going to talk about that and what the plans are. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here at 710 KNUS. It's the final hour of the show before we turn it over to Charlie Kirk and then DP Dennis Prager, a little SG Seb Gorka. And then it's going to be JS, Jimmy Sengenberger, all E's in the last name, followed by Officer Brandon Tatum. I think he was an officer for a couple years out there in Arizona. That's a big-time national show. If you want to listen to Stephen Tubbs, you're going to have to roll around various bars in the metro area at about 2 or 3 in the morning. Otherwise, he is just not on the air anymore. One cool thing when we're talking about this is I have a car right in front of my house. It's been sitting there motionless for months. Haven't known what to do with it. You know where I'm going with this. I'm going to give it to Step Denver. I'm going to donate it to them because, as you know, Step Denver is saving lives every single day. They don't take taxpayer money. And who doesn't love that sentence? They don't take taxpayer money. They do it all with our help, your and mine. So they go out there and provide this safe, structured, stable environment for men to get off the street and to work out of their addictions so that within not a month, not 2 months, not a year, but over the course of several years, they get them back on their feet permanent-like, where they can be fully functioning, contributing members of society. We need more organizations like Step Denver. The only reason they can do it is because folks like you and me donate our cars and our trucks, and that's what I'm going to do. We have December the 5th as our Colorado Gives Day. We'll be there live doing the show. Billy and I trying to figure out how to get the car to them. But you don't have to wait for that moment, although it'd be cool if you did. But you don't have to wait for that moment to help them out. You can call them for the hassle-free tow at 303-296-9020, 303-296-9020, or you can visit stepdenver.org. That's stepdenver.org. Now, listen, we have a special VIP guest on the line. I hope he listened to the beginning of the show because it says the 3 most useless jobs in the world are lawyer, congressman, and doctor. Representative Mike Lynch, thanks for joining us. The first big question is, are you going to become a doctor? No, I'm kidding. Are you are you at all contemplating making a transition to the big stage?
Well, I was ready to talk about this special session. I'm busy doing my job.
I know, man, but you knew I had to ask that question at some point. I thought we'd get it out of the way first and then get into the good stuff.
I didn't know we were going to have that conversation on the air, but yes, I am thinking quite deeply about that. Honestly, all of that distraction really got taken away with what's going on, and starting tomorrow, the big fun.
I do think that's important. And listen, I think everybody would look at you and say, of course, the dude needs to seriously consider this. Whether you end up pulling the trigger on it or not is different. But I'm glad to hear you're seriously considering it. But I don't want to belabor that point. My hope is when you make the decision, whatever it is, that you'll come on here and we can have a conversation about it then.
You bet, George. You'll be one of the first to know.
And by one of the first, I hope that means the very first. But we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, there is big stuff that is about to take place on the aftermath of the shellacking that HH took. A real testament to you and Rose and Barb Kirkmeyer and Michael Fields, all the folks that were out there trying to educate people on the lie that was HH. And now the governor, who should have never had to, I'm going to say it, Mike, should have never had to call special session because the legislature could have addressed this way back during the session. Now he's called it. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for the record, we could have taken care of this in a previous session. I mean, this has been forthcoming for a while. There's no foresight with how they're planning here. But, so we are going to see, I'm afraid, even 60% of the voters said, "Hey, don't mess with my Tabor." I really think that I don't think I am all but certain that they're going to solve this problem once again by dipping into Tabor surplus. The state has like a 15% reserve right now. We've got plenty of money. I can't think of a better reason to dip into some of taxpayers' money. It's not the government money. This conversation has driven me crazy because it's like it's the government money versus the people's money, and it's all the people's money. So I think we have put our proposal out. We've worked diligently. I have been on more doggone Zoom calls than you can imagine over the last week with the right people in the room that really do have input into how this is going to play out. And it's funny because they ask me, so what are the Democrats saying? And I'm confused because why are they not talking to the treasurers and the assessors and the county commissioners and the CMLs of the world? So,
well, but they never talk to them in advance of HH, and they never talk to you in advance of HH. So in a state where we have such dominant one-party control at the moment, it doesn't shock me that they just talk to each other.
Yeah, right. Well, and this is really their approach, and this really came to light this week, which is we're going to develop a really good plan, and then we will run it past the stakeholders. We do it exactly the opposite. So we don't present a plan unless we know that the people of Colorado are behind it. And the people in this case, we had less than 36 hours to get bills turned in. That wasn't a big deal for Republicans because we'd been talking about this. We were prepared. We had a plan, but we still went back to stakehold all of these issues to make sure that we had the fine points right. And you know, our plan is as good as it gets. This is not ideology. These are numbers. These are percentages. These are priorities. This is priorities. Where are your priorities, government? Is it for you to keep as much money, or is it for you to do something good for the citizens, which will have to leave this state, I might add. Those on fixed incomes are in danger of having to leave our state because they're getting taxed out of this state. And so we'll see where it goes. Our proposal, we presented one bill, the same bill from the House and the Senate. We made it simple. We'll see. If I was a betting man, I would guess by lunch tomorrow, that is probably dead, and we'll now be moving forward.
When do you guys get underway for the special session?
Yeah, we kick off tomorrow at 9. Gavel in, gavel out, go right to committee. And before the day is over, whatever comes out of those committees will be on second reading. And it has to go that way. For this to be done in 3 days, it has to go that way. So we'll be back on the floor Friday night. We're
talking with Minority Leader Representative Mike Lynch. Do you have any hope of moving the Democrats off of Tabor?
You know, honestly, no.
Jeez.
I mean, in the early discussions with leadership, you know, they pretty much are determined that that's where it's going to come from. Don't mind the fact that 60% of the voters just said, keep your hands off of Tabor. The money is there. They don't have to do this, but they are just determined to use that money instead of using, you know, the state surplus or the general fund.
They don't read the election results that way. You've probably heard this. I've seen it on social media. Some of these crack smoke crazy folks say the reason HH lost was because it was too much of a giveaway to property owners, homeowners, and not enough to renters. And I'm like, that's what you think 60-40 is? And that's nuts.
Right. Well, and they'll have a solution for that too. You know, I don't know how a renter's problem becomes a homeowner's problem unless they're a tenant. And so we're doing the right thing for property owners. We're reducing the burden on them. We would anticipate they would go on ahead and pass that savings or that benefit on to the renters. But that's not enough. And so what will come out of this, George, which just drives me crazy because this is socialism 101. They are going to have a normalized return, at least for this year. And this will be the second year that they've done this, which means we're going to let the citizens just kind of get used to this, and then we'll make it permanent. That's the thing that's going to kill me on this, because that has nothing to do with property tax, by the way.
One of the things, too, that I have heard from a friend of ours, Michael Fields out at Advance Colorado Institute, is that this is likely an unlawful use of Tabor refunds. Have you guys explored that, talked about that, told the Dems about that?
Yeah, no, that is definitely on the table. However, constitutionality is not necessarily a prerequisite for them to bring bills forward.
In fact, it's not even a prerequisite to them getting them passed and executed, because as we've seen with the Supreme Court, they tend to just shrug when the legislature does anything, like, oh, well, I guess you can do it.
Yeah, I have literally on the floor said, hey, this isn't constitutional to another member on the other side. And they said, well, okay, whatever, we'll let the courts deal with that. Like, really?
You guys also unrolled a plan that you guys have. Yeah. And you started to talk about that. Talk to us about what the Republicans are proposing. Not that you can enforce your will, because as it is right now, the legislature is just so dominated by the other folks, but tell us what you got on the table.
Right. So The only real lever the state government has in this is to mess with that assessment rate. So that's the first thing. Take that to 6.5 from 6.76. That does wonderful things for folks. I mean, and really, that's the only lever. On one of the two bills, we are actually proposing income tax relief. I mean, if they're going to legislate how Tabor is redistributed, you would think that it would be in the scope for us to say, well, let's just not take as much of that. So we're going to, my bill, which is coming out of the House, will have that on it. The Senate bill will not have that on it. Other areas where we do believe there needs to be a task force to really do the work on this. We believe that should be heavy on local governments, not state governments. We have disagreement with that. They want that to be legislator heavy. You know, for the legislators, 3 of them that I know of, and myself not included, know a lot about this. That's Puglisi, Kirkmeyer, and Pelton. They've been county commissioners. There are no other folks with that sort of experience of the 100 members down there.
They must be relying upon them for their expertise, is what you're about to say.
Well, they're going to get a lot of it now. Whether they take that advice or not, I don't know. So that's the other. So that task force, I do see that coming through. However, we disagree with how that is composed. Really, George, at the end of the day, this is an opportunity for us to give our best fight in this. The voters have spoken. However, we're going to let them own this. So you're going to hear a lot about how the Republicans didn't work with this, and you know, they didn't do anything to help this out. But we're going to let them own it. We're going to let them own it. I know that my caucus is pretty, unless we get some real benefit to the citizens, we're just not going to have our name anywhere near it. So, and they're not used to that. You know, Governor Polis wants this to be a bipartisan effort. Well, I will tell you, it is time for the people that are in charge, which are the Democrats, to for once actually own something. And we're going to give them that opportunity this week. So,
how much of what takes place during this limited special session is going to foreshadow anything that takes place in the actual session starting in January?
Don't depress me early. You know, I don't think a lot, honestly. I mean, this is such a focused effort. We're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff in the special session that I think will avoid those conversations over the weekend. However, what you will see is the Republicans are really sick of working with folks that then turn around and don't listen to the voters, listen to the people. So I think in that regard, that'll be a little bit of a foreshadowing. I think we are going to fight more vigorously than we have before. But there's going to be some really goofy stuff coming from the Dems.
The governor and the Dems have shown themselves repeatedly since their dominant position in state government to be like that teenage kid that comes to you and says, "Hey, Dad, can I have an extension on curfew until 11? You say no, and then they just come home at midnight anyway." You know what I mean? They're
Right.
like, "No, whatever. I appreciate your input."
Exactly.
They came to you to seek permission, but the permission isn't really needed. They're just going to do what they want to do anyway.
Right, and this shouldn't be a big surprise. When the voters a couple years ago said, "Hey, let's not mess with oil and gas," and then we come back in session and run Senate Bill 181, which, you know, all but puts those guys out of business. It definitely makes it harder. And in my district, in Weld County, you know, those are hardworking, good American jobs that they don't care about that. So we've seen this before. We were very hopeful that, you know, knowing that they had no plan on November 7th, and we did, that they would at least listen to and consider our ideas. I sent this bill out as early as my members got it. I was talking to Democrats. I sent it out to every single Democrat, said, "I want you to come on board." 2 people responded and said, "Hey, thanks for sending it. However, I won't be on it." So and once again, what happened is the legislators, the Democrats don't have anybody that's coming from local government, looked at each other and said, "What do we do?" And then somebody from the first floor ran up and said, "Here's the latest solution." So once again, the governor is running this thing, you know, right down the throats of Colorado citizens, even though they've said no.
How many folks are going to get to vote on hijacking our Tabor refunds who were not themselves elected by voters? And you know what I'm asking you here is we seem to have a jillion people in the legislature that were simply appointed by a small group of folks. How many are there?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but it is a record number. It is a record number. I think, don't quote me on this, I think it's 6 on the D side, and we've got just one that was appointed. But yeah, a lot of folks that were not put there by more than a handful of people.
Has there been any discussion about how to address, if at all, legislator / self-described gangster and Hamas celebrant Tim Hernandez?
That's I know that is not they're trying to avoid that for the weekend. I will tell you for sure. Members of my caucus have called just for an immediate, just come on, let's get rid of this guy. We'll see how this goes. That is part of that keeps me coming back with a smile going, I just don't know what the heck's going to happen. You got to keep your sense of humor about it. I think his position is that I came back, I apologized, and I'm a new person.
Sure. After the first mealy mouth little social media post that was like, everybody's at fault anyway. And then it was only after I think the world started caving in that he did that hostage-like video where he mouthed the words, I condemn Hamas. And it was like, I don't know what it was, but it was.
Can you move your finger? I can't see that one word.
That's right. It just wasn't super persuasive, even when he got his hands going. And that's his thing. I mean, if you want to stop this guy from talking on the floor of the House, Mike, you just merely have to put his hands in his pockets. He's a mute. He can't do it. This is exciting stuff only because the potential for horrible outcomes is really unlimited, given what's going on to the Gold Dome. I hope you're willing to come back in and do an after action report sometime next week when the dust settles, when we know how much of our Tabor refunds they've hijacked.
You bet. Yeah. It's not gonna be a huge surprise to me how this turns out, but I'm ever faithful. That's what keeps me going back down there, right? Weirder things have happened, but unfortunately, I'm not optimistic that this is going to be good for Colorado. So, but I am optimistic that HH, invigorated folks. It created a little victory for the Republicans, and they're like, well, hey, maybe we can, if we just get going, make a difference here. And it got people engaged, and that's what we need in this state. The majority of this state is not super woke progressive. These are just people that want to go make a living and the government to stay out of the way. And that's all we want to.
What we need, and I know you agree with this, what we need are those same people to look past HH and show up next November and vote for some common sense. I give a crap about Colorado's middle class and hardworking folks, and return some balance to the Capitol so that this kind of garbage doesn't happen year in and year out. That's what we need. We just haven't gotten it.
Absolutely. And I think, HH is kind of the beginning of that. So that's the good news on that. I always like to end with a positive note, but we'll see. It'll be battle as normal down there. I'm afraid, with the same result. So
he's the minority leader for the state house. We'd love him to be the majority leader, or dare I say speaker. His name is Mike Lynch. He's pledged to make us one of the top 100 places he'll go when he makes a decision about CD4. I'd like to be in the top 50 if you don't mind. Also down there doing yeoman's work this weekend. Give them a prayer, give them a shout of support. Let's try to keep them from really taking every cent of our Tabor refunds. It's Mike Lynch. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Hey, thank you, George. Always a pleasure.
Yep, ditto. Hey, listen, one of the things that might help you in your daily life, I'm talking to the dudes now, right, is you're at a place where maybe you've decided I'm just going to live with the fact that I have a receding hairline or thinning hair, or my hair just doesn't look the way it used to, and I don't feel as confident. I don't feel as youthful. I wear hats all the time. I'm in radio, whatever it is. There's an answer to that, and that's our friends at Advanced Hair Restoration. I'm talking about Dr. Tanya Pauls. They've been doing this thing for a year. They do something, by the way, guaranteed. And that's a word you just don't hear enough anymore. Like, they will guarantee to take your money, but they won't guarantee on the product. That's just not true of Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration from the experience itself to their unmatched results. A simple one-day treatment. Both of those words are awesome. Simple, and I'm going to treat one day as hyphenated so I don't sound like an idiot with one word. Experienced professionals doing this for you. Now, listen, you call them up at 720-459-HAIR, and that's not the rabbit, it's the thing on your head, HAIR, unless you're like Billy and you've had a rabbit on your head. 720-459-HAIR. And if you qualify, and I wish I could tell you it's 100% of the people, it's just the vast majority of people, they'll give you $250 off today, as well as 250 free hair grafts. 250 free hair grafts. You start noticing the change right away. Your real hair, your hair starts growing right away. Check them out at advancehair.com, or call them 720-459-HAIR, 720-459-HAIR. When we come back, we're going to be joined by another legislator. It touches upon this, but it is such an unusual, interesting thing that is happening with our own Republican Party here in the state of Colorado, as well as how we're trying to address this. It's going to be Representative Lisa Frizell. We're going to do her by Zoom as well, too. She has foolishly agreed to do the Zoom. She's going to be number 2 out of the chute. It's very much like Gus Grissom. You know what I mean? The second guy to be shot into space after Alan Shepard. This is where the bolts get blown. This is where the wheels come off the bus. Lisa, in advance, I want to apologize and also thank you for subjecting yourself to this. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Minority Leader Mike Lynch for bringing us up to speed on some of what's going on there under the Gold Dome and what to expect. If you're looking for an attorney and things have gone wrong if you do, very few people ever say, hey, I just won the lottery, I need an attorney. That's when you get your CPA or some financial person. But if you get hurt in an accident from someone else's negligence, intentional conduct, sometimes reckless conduct, there's really one place to go. That's Dan Kaplan. He and his partner, Babar Wahid, they've been knocking it out of the park for years. Historic results. And that's not me talking, that's history talking. Back to back to back to back to back. I believe that's 5 multi-million-dollar verdicts, largest outcome against a trucking company ever. That's ever with 2 E's in it. You need that kind of experience. Also, he's very straight shooter. He's not going to tell you, I'll get you $1 trillion for your paper cut. That's not this guy. That's other dudes. That's other dudes. He's the guy that gives you the straight scoop. This is where we're at. He's the guy that will say the better your life is, the lower the value of your cases. And that just rings true. And that's what you want. You want candor, competence, expertise, and fearlessness. All of that, Dan Kaplan. Check him out at dankaplanslaw.com. That's Dan Kaplan, Kaplis law.com. You can reach him at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Our second victim/volunteer for the Zoom interview experiment that we're going through today is a friend of the show, friend of mine, world traveler, and based on the video, a very clean house. Also, Representative Lisa Frizell. Representative Frizell, thanks for joining us.
George, good morning. How are you?
I'm living the dream. You're number 2. Now, earlier, just an hour ago, we had on the state demographer. So you are the Gus Grissom of this Mercury experiment that we're going through right now. I hope it turns out better, by the way.
Well, I'm going to be hopeful.
Okay, good. Now, listen, you are someone who we've talked to before about being on the front edge, the very proactive portion of what the legislature woulda, coulda, shoulda done on these exploding property assessed values and their associated taxes. First, tell us what you had done, and it didn't work out, not because of you in the legislature, and what's happening now.
Yeah, thanks, George. So what happened before session started was Rose Puglisi and Senator Byron Pelton and Assistant Minority Leader Rose Puglisi and I sat down. The 3 of us have extensive local government experience. They are both former county commissioners, and I'm a former assessor. Spent 25 years in the Douglas County Assessor's Office altogether. And the 3 of us knew, the writing was on the wall, that we were looking at extraordinary increases in property values, and we wanted to help create a plan that we were very much hoping that we could have bipartisan support on. Our plans were to create a conversation because this is not a partisan issue. It is a Colorado issue. And so we wanted to really be the tip of the spear on this. So our plan was fairly simple. We were going to run 2 bills. One was creating a property tax task force to actually create the replace part of the repeal and replace that we heard with the Gallagher repeal. So because this is a big issue, it touches so many different entities, whether it's local government, whether you're a citizen, whether you're school for school financing, property taxes touches so many people. So this needs to be a fairly well stakeholdered effort. That takes time. And so we were going to create this task force that would come up with the best property tax policy for the citizens of this wonderful state, because our citizens deserve it. The other piece of it was creating a 2-year timeout on property tax increases. Now, we had to acknowledge that the cost of doing business for local government had increased. And so we built in a freeze plus 5% increase on the 2022 values. It was pretty simple. But unfortunately, while we went and spoke with the governor's staff, they kind of nodded politely and sent us along our way. they killed the bill that I ran from the House,
Go figure.
which was the 2-year timeout. Yeah, shocking. They killed it, and they killed it. It was surprising to me because they weren't even willing to have the conversation. And then I found out that members of the Finance Committee that I sit on were told by the governor's office to vote it down because the governor had something better coming. So this was at end of February, beginning of March, when my bill hit committee and was killed. And then from that time to the end of April was how long they had to wait until Senate Bill 303 showed up.
That we know how it turned out then. We also know that then they did this end run to try to use this crisis to get Colorado voters to give away their Tabor refunds in perpetuity. That didn't happen. It didn't turn out well. It was 60-40. I saw you at the big celebration afterwards. Now it looks like we're going to have a special session where the legislature, a la setbacks for oil and gas, are going to be like, well, you didn't give us permission, but that's okay. We're going to do it without you anyway. But here's the interesting thing, and here's the thing that I wanted to talk with you about. Got an email from the state GOP, David Williams, who's been on the show a bunch. I think we're going to have him on next week. And he is like touting this new approach, this new bill. And it's based on Kevin Van Winkle, who's a friend of ours. He's a guy from Douglas County. He's a Republican representative, something called the Van Winkle Plan. Now, I read the 2-sentence description of it, and I thought, this sounds interesting to me. This sounds really like a great idea. When you read about it, how did it strike you?
Seemed eerily familiar.
In what way?
In that it is a very significant version of the bill that Byron Pelton and I ran.
Now, is that a bill that you guys, when you guys launch these efforts, especially in advance of a special session, and I presume that's where this thing sees the light of day, at least momentarily, do you guys all get together in conference or something and say, hey, what about reviving, Lisa and Byron's bill? Or is it just something that happened? I mean, do you guys find out from each other when the media hits or an email goes out?
So this has been a really interesting week. And, I talked to you, I think it was a week ago, when we found out that there was going to be a special session.
That's right.
So since that time, I've been involved with a whole bunch of caucus meetings. There has been a lot of effort to consolidate our bills on the Republican side so that we have a unified message. And I feel that that's been very successful. I will also tell you that one of the things on the table in this unified message was reviving House Bill 23-1054, which was Senator Pelton's and my bill, and to insert that as part of the package of items of interest that we are including in a larger bill. The decision was made, and I agree with this decision, that ship kind of sailed. Since my bill was introduced, since 1054 was introduced, a lot has happened. Assessors have delivered their values, such that they have gone through appeals. Citizens have gone through this whole process, and values have been refined. At this point, if we want to provide real property tax relief, we have got to adjust the assessment rate. We have got to lower that actual value through a reduction mechanism. That's part of the Republican in the House and the Senate's plan. And we need to provide real relief to even our renters by a reduction in income tax rates. That's how you help people.
And I get that. And I agree with you. I think the backstory here is one that is interesting, given that the kinds of things that I see developing for our party are things that you would normally associate with a party in the majority. Like, we have the luxury of doing this, that, or the other to each other. This one feels differently to me. In fact, By the way, on the Denver Post, Lisa, you should know they've got a picture up here under Colorado lawmakers aim for property tax cuts, higher tax credits, and flat refunds in special session. You're in the picture. So it's just congratulations. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but it's there. But the interesting thing is, and I'd love to talk to Kevin about this too, it just seems interestingly timed, given that Kevin has announced he's running for county commissioner in our county, in Douglas County. And I don't know if that's the reason that it's getting the publicity it's getting, or it's earned the name from the state GOP, the Van Winkle plan, which feels a lot more like the Puglisi-Pelton Frizell plan. I don't mean to put you last out of that order, but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, any sense of that?
Politics is an interesting arena, and I'm not sure what decision-making process Senator Van Winkle went through. He certainly didn't talk to me, which is fine. But the bottom line is we need to. I love your comment that we are operating like we are the majority party, because we are not. We're absolutely not. We are only a few bodies short of being a super minority in both chambers. We really need to be unified in our message, which is the citizens of Colorado need and deserve property tax relief without dipping into the Tabor surplus. The voters of this state were crystal clear on election day that they don't want property tax relief coming out of Tabor. I thought it was pretty clear. Unfortunately, our friends across the aisle would disagree.
Well, it's more than that. I told Mike Lynch when he was on, you read some of these social media posts and the spin that the Denverites are trying to put on the Denver Democrats on this, where, well, clearly HH was rejected because it didn't provide enough relief for renters and provided too much relief for homeowners. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I don't remember a single ad to voters saying, vote no on HH, it doesn't do enough for renters. I don't remember a single ad. I remember every single ad being, you are stealing our Tabor refunds. You are trying to trick us out of our Tabor refunds. So it's just a fascinating spin to justify what they're about to do. I'm anxious to see how it turns out. I'm glad you're there. I just wish there were more of you there to do this. Whenever the dust settles on this thing, I'd love to have you back on next week to talk about what happened.
I'd be happy to have that conversation, George. It's going to be a very interesting several days between some of the inflammatory comments made by one of the House Democrats around Israel and the two Palestinian demonstrations, one tomorrow, one on Saturday. It is going to be a very highly charged atmosphere, and then you throw property tax into it. I don't believe that having dysfunction and disunity in the Republican Party as we enter into this is valuable at all. It is not helpful to our citizens, and we really, again, our citizens need and deserve property tax relief. That's why they voted down HH, and that's why they want a special session. We need to get up there and do our jobs and deliver that to them.
Representative Lisa Frizell, I think my representative, it is great to have you on. Good luck tomorrow. I did not know about the Palestinian stuff. We'll talk about that too next time we have you on, but good luck out there.
Thank you so much, George. You have a great weekend.
Take care. Hey, that's Representative Lisa Frizell from Douglas County. Big stuff happening at the Capitol this weekend. I thought it was all going to be related to the Dems trying to steal our Tabor refunds. It sounds like it's even going to be bigger than that outside the Gold Dome. We'll keep you informed as those things develop. Here's the plan before I cut away for a break here and we end up with that last segment of the show, and I'll try to get you Chris on. I will. I got to talk to you about custom countertops. It seems like it's something that would be easy to do. You just cut the stone, you move it in, you glue it down, nail it. It's not like that at all. It's about precision. It's about craftsmanship. It takes a lot of expertise to cut these rock solid materials, many of which are God-made, some of which are man-made. The God-made ones are a challenge too, because you're trying, if you've ever had countertops put in your house, trying to put them together, the pieces, because they don't come out that big, seamlessly. That takes real skill, real craftsmanship. The guy you call for that is Mitch Floria with The Art of Granite. And The Art of Granite is a bit misleading. And I'm going to tell Mitch that the next time we get him in the studio. It needs to be The Art of Granite and marble and quartz and everything else you can make a countertop out of. And he loves 710. Loves 710 listeners so much that he extends not only the wholesale prices to you, which is already huge, but you tell him you listen to the George Show on 710 and you get the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package, or you get the sink for free if you're just doing the one room, the one package. And don't forget about them when you go to do your basement, right? Your contractor may come in and bid certain things. Make sure you reach out separately to Mitch Floria or tell your contractor, I want to work with The Art of Granite. You give him a call on his phone, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. You can check them out at theartofgranite.com. When we come back, Chris, you, me, some texts. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here at 710 KNUS. Final moments of the show. I want to tell you, today's the day I got to make my own little run to the natural grocers to get myself that 3-day free supply of UltraCur while I figure out how to get some more. Billy and I have been taking this stuff for a bit now. It is the anti-inflammatory, antioxidant answer to what ails you right now. But you get to find out for free. You just go to the natural grocers, ask the vitamin manager, and there is one. And yes, you have to go through that person. They give you the free 3-day supply along with a 3-day supply for a friend or a loved one. And I'm telling you, man, 50% of the people that take this experience relief within 48 hours, 50% of those within 2 hours. There's just no good reason to not do it. Costs you just to drive to your natural grocers. That's getultranow.com, getultranow.com. Hey, that does it for us here at the George Show. We'll be back tomorrow, including the loser edition and all the things that take place between now and then. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.